I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
Hey guys, welcome back to Sab's podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I do want to let you know that Sab's podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays for the Sabby and JB show, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, Twitter, and Rumble. And welcome back, guys. We do have a very special guest that is joining us. Really quickly, I do want to show you what we are discussing tonight. It is a crazy time for news, ladies and gentlemen. I feel like we're living in a cartoon, and that's what it feels like. Let's see what we're talking about tonight. Tonight, we are discussing, if you haven't heard about this, there may be trouble in paradise. It appears that Ben Shapiro had a little back and forth here with Matt Walsh. There seems to be a disagreement about where conservatives should go. And I think this points to something about Ben Shapiro in particular. It seems like it seems to be a common denominator. He's the one that people are disagreeing with. So we're going to get into that conversation. We're also going to discuss, of course, there was the No Kings protest, which happened on Saturday all across the U.S. We're going to get into some of the politicians that participated in that protest, who was a part of it, who sponsored it, and what were the demands? Because I don't think they mentioned demands. So we'll get into all of that, folks. We're also going to discuss Angela Rye is at it again. You guys remember her before from her infamous interview with Jill Stein that time on The Breakfast Club. Angela Rye is throwing shade once again in the podcast space, as she feels apparently that Mark Lamont Hill only belongs in certain areas. We're going to get into all of that between her and Joe Budden. We're also going to discuss this story. I can't believe it was actually published, but we talked about it on here before. There was an article that was published by The Nation about the Congressional Black Caucus and their silence with Israel. So we're going to break that down. Of course, our special guest, Larry Wilkerson, will join us in just a second. And we are going to discuss, of course, with Larry. If you guys have not heard the news, Israel did strike Gaza. So they are back at it once again. So let's go ahead and bring in our special guest. You have seen him here before. His name is Colonel Larry Wilkerson. He was the former chief of staff to U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell. Let's go ahead and bring him in. Welcome, Larry.
Good to be with you, Sabby. Could I ask you a very personal question?
Go for it.
Can you loan me some of your color? I look like a washed out old man on the TV. I was just doing a podcast with Doha and Qatar, and I was looking at myself and said, "Oh my God, you look more than 80." I need some color.
Man. You look fine, Larry. You look fine. But I do have to say this before we get into the Israel thing. First and foremost, for those who are not aware, like obviously, Larry Wilkerson is retired, and you could have just easily just went off to an island somewhere and just sipped Mai Tais and just rode this thing out. But you continue to come forward to speak out against these wars that is happening. And I think that really means something, because you really don't have to do this, but you've been very vocal against these wars around the world. So I do appreciate that. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I will tell you that before I left state, I was, shall I say, solicited, in one case illegally, to go out and make at least hundreds of thousands, if not millions. And the jobs were going to be in, are you ready for this? They were going to be in places like Georgia and Ukraine, because even at that early time, I'm talking 2005 here, we were in that region doing nefarious things. And I had to tell one person who wanted to hire me on behalf of a general whom I'd known before, who wanted me essentially to go to Tbilisi, Georgia, and work there. And I said to him, first of all, you're illegal, and I'm going to stop listening to you. I am not out of the government yet, so you cannot offer me a job. You are breaking the law. And he looked at me and said, whoa, I didn't know that. I said, I bet you did know that. But anyway, that's the kind of pressure that's put on people when they're leaving government.
Yeah, I can imagine. I want to get started with this Israel situation. So Trump came up with this Gaza peace plan, which you and I both know was not a real peace plan. But he came up with this, and he sold this to the public that, there's peace now. Look at me. I accomplished peace in the Middle East. It wasn't even 24 hours. And Israel already started to kill Palestinians yet again. Corporate media didn't cover it in mass. Sky News covered it, of all outlets, which is really interesting, but not in mass. And I do want to show people this here, just a reminder. Shout out to Jordan. Whoa, a violation of the ceasefire deal, do you say? Again, just a reminder here, because Al Jazeera did cover that Gaza authorities say that Israeli army has committed 47 violations of the ceasefire, killing 38 people and wounding another 143. Again, not even 24 hours. Now, this message is coming from the State Department. As of Sunday morning, it says here from the State Department, the U.S. has informed the guarantor nations of the Gaza peace agreement of credible reports indicating an imminent ceasefire violation by Hamas against the people of Gaza. The planned attack against Palestinian civilians would constitute a direct and grave violation of the ceasefire agreement and undermine the significant progress achieved through mediation efforts. The guarantors demand Hamas uphold its obligations under the ceasefire terms. And then they go on to say, like, obviously, yada, yada, the U.S. could continue and get involved. But the point is this: I haven't seen any evidence that Hamas has broken the ceasefire, but we have seen evidence that Israel broke the ceasefire not too long after this so-called agreement. What is your take on all of this? Because I feel like this is just a way for them to continue slaughtering Palestinian people, which they started again today. For people who are not aware, Israel did strike Gaza again Sunday morning.
Your view is fundamentally correct. And let's just start with the opening philosophy, if you will. Bibi Netanyahu has never kept a ceasefire in his entire life. Bibi Netanyahu uses ceasefires to do several things. One, to rest and refit and recoup his military. And he's got a real task there because they have been roundly defeated by Hamas in this last session, particularly in Gaza City. Second, he uses ceasefires to reestablish what he thinks is deterrence, dominance, whatever term you want to use, over his enemy by making it look in the initial stages of his violations that they are the ones who either caused it or indeed they are the ones who broke the ceasefire first, and he's just responding to them. This is standard Bibi Netanyahu tactic. I knew it wouldn't last. I mean, I was telling people 5 minutes after Trump went on television, this is bull. There's no way Bibi's going to keep this ceasefire. And he didn't go to the conference. And I know one of the reasons he didn't go to the conference was because he didn't want to be amongst the people he was going to have to explain this to afterwards, because he knows they're going to know he was a blatant liar and a cheat. He never kept a ceasefire in his life. He's still fighting in Lebanon. There's a ceasefire there. He's still fighting elsewhere. West Bank, he's still shooting people, killing people, driving them off their land. Bibi does not stop unless he needs to. And in this case, he needed a little respite. He got it. Now he's going back. And of course, he's blaming it on Hamas. Now, I will add, there are some fighters in Gaza right now. And one wonders precisely whom they are. I've heard that they might be ISIS, whom we trained in Syria, the CIA worked with in Syria, and now they've been introduced into Gaza to give Hamas problems. I've heard that they're a gang of people that have come across the border and have weapons. Who gave them the weapons? And that they're attacking Hamas. Well, who would they be attacking Hamas for? Is that really a question? Whom would they be attacking Hamas for? Israel, of course. So they've got third parties in there now, making it look as if Hamas is actually killing its own people, the Palestinians. It isn't Hamas who's killing them. It's these mercenaries who've come in that's killing them. So Bibi's doing his normal thing.
Yeah, the ISIS that they told us was they were terrorists, etc. It's interesting how they managed to rebrand ISIS after all these years. But I have some hope that a lot of people are not falling for this. I do want to show everyone what took place Sunday morning here. Renewed fighting tests Gaza ceasefire, and Israel briefly halts aid. So here's another thing that's happening. So now Israel is using this as an excuse to not continue to allow aid to come into Gaza. So does everybody see the genocide is continuing? So it says here, Gaza's fragile ceasefire faced its first major test on Sunday as Israeli forces launched a wave of deadly strikes, saying Hamas militants had killed 2 soldiers, and an Israeli security official said the transfer of aid into the territory was halted. So again, correct me if I'm wrong, Larry. Let's say this was true, even though I don't believe it is, but let's say this was true. They still can't stop bringing in aid to the women and children. They can't prevent aid from coming in. That's still a war crime.
No, they discovered with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, an oxymoron, they discovered that one of the most efficient ways to continue and massively kill Palestinians was to pretend to be feeding them at 4 sites that they could massively arm, shoot at the people, kill a few of them, move them back against the IDF forces that were surrounding them, and continue the killing. So the aid sites were actually killing sites. And we've had people like Colonel Aguilar, Tony Aguilar, reveal that to us. It's a very effective way to kill people. It's better than bullets and bombs because you don't have to spend the money for the bullets and bombs. You just invite the people into the food and then kill them. So he's back using that tactic again, too. I knew he was not going to feed them. I knew there wouldn't be any more feeding than an hour or two, just enough to get the Palestinians concentrated in areas around the trucks and then start killing them again. That's his tactic. He's using food, and he's using dangerous situations with regard to dispensing that food in order to continue killing. And soon, of course, we'll be back to people starving again.
We cannot stop talking about this. And one of my biggest fears that I had was that once Trump said we have this Gaza peace deal, that people were going to go back to brunch. That was my biggest fear. And one of the things I've noticed too is that there are influencers. You probably heard about the paid pro-Israel influencers. They are heavily boosted on X, and they are sending it out there like Trump is the peace president. Look at what he has done. And because they're heavily pushed by the algorithm on X, like they're getting thousands and thousands of views and retweets, et cetera. And I'm like, this is incorrect information. There is no peace in Gaza. And in my opinion, I feel like as long as Israel is there, there will never be peace, because it's just the whole idea. When you look at the creation of Israel, et cetera, when you look at the Iron Dome, this idea that we can attack you, but we have this big dome that protects us so that you can't come after us, right? That very idea, after they have expelled people off of their land, in itself is it's disgusting. And so they are very much protected, not just by their Iron Dome, but also by the West. Now, we are starting to see a little bit of shift here. I don't know if you heard about this. Seth Moulton, Congressman Seth Moulton, has publicly announced that he is not taking money from AIPAC anymore, that he is sending his money back to AIPAC, which I think is a step in the right direction. But that also, to me, says something that they are starting to see, the pro-Israel position may not be a winning position. And for those who don't know, Seth Moulton is a representative here in Massachusetts, so I'm very familiar with him. He wants to run for Senate, and he feels like this is going to be a losing position if he has that position, I think. But even in his statement, he said that AIPAC's alignment with Netanyahu's government is a problem, and I can't be attached to that anymore. But when you say that and you say it's just Netanyahu's government, to me, that leaves the door open to, well, if Netanyahu is replaced, I'll be fine with taking money from AIPAC again. So I think the thing is that this idea that it's just Netanyahu's government, I don't believe that, because like people like Max Blumenthal that have been to Israel and been to Gaza, they have explained that like a lot of the Israelis feel that Benjamin Netanyahu isn't going hard enough.
You've got the truth right there. Let me just back up a little bit. The Iron Dome over Israel is not some mystical air defense system. It's the United States of America. That's the dome that's over Israel. And it's not just over Israel. It's around its flanks. It's in its lunches and its dinners. It's Donald Trump kowtowing to Miriam Adelson. It's Jared Kushner making an absolute ass of himself. It's all of this, and it's all America providing the wherewithal for Netanyahu and the IDF to do what they're doing. So I fight with this concept all the time that AIPAC and Israel influence the United States to do what Israel wants done for it. There's some of that with the Congress and others, but the real geostrategic reality is the United States is using Israel to do its wishes, and it pays it to do its wishes. It pays it very handsomely to do its wishes. The person who told the truth, Sabby, was Lindsey Graham from my home state on the floor of the Senate, when he, in a moment of frustration, said, "Come on, people. If they weren't doing it, we'd have to be there doing it. Would you rather us be there doing it?" That's the truth. That's what the truth is about the neoconservatives who have this government in their grasp. We would have to be there killing Palestinians. And we don't have to be, so we should be thankful for Netanyahu. That was what was behind Trump's obsequious comments in the Knesset. That was what was behind this subterfuge of a ceasefire. Remember what we did to the Iranians? We got them in serious negotiations. We got them up to the last day of those negotiations. And then the day before that, we bombed the hell out of them and killed a lot of people, including members of scientists' families, generals' families, and others. A clear war crime. That's what we're doing with this. And Sabby, this is preparatory to all of this ceasefire and the brouhaha about this ceasefire is all preparatory to the ultimate campaign against Iran. This is giving Bibi respite so he can get together and get his ducks in line and go after Iran. A little bit later, I think now, I thought it was imminent. But because of this and Trump throwing this monkey wrench, as it were, into his plans, because Trump does not want to go to war with Iran. I can bet you on that. He does not want to go to war with Iran. But Bibi is going to drag him into it. And this is his opportunity to rest and refit a little bit before he goes to war with Iran. And then Trump is going to have a stark choice. Do I let him do this and destroy utterly the state of Israel? Remember what I said about who Israel belongs to? Or do I go in with him and risk unraveling my own empire? Because if we get involved in Iran with Russia and China behind it and Pakistan allied with it, with the nuclear weapons, we're in trouble. We're in big trouble. We will not come out of that war looking the same as we went in.
Yeah, that's my big fear, that this does escalate back to Iran. And we can't beat them. We just can't.
Well, you've got to parse into it the fact that he has very good German submarines now in the North Arabian Sea and in the Eastern Mediterranean that can fire a nuclear weapon. So he has got the capacity to execute the Samson option, that's what they call it, in the event that he feels like Israel's in an existential situation with respect to Iran, and they will be within a week or two. If he starts it again, it'll take about a week, maybe two, and Iran will have them at their knees. He'll fire those nuclear weapons, and he'll use that as a threat against Donald Trump. I will fire a nuclear weapon on Tehran or two or three unless you come in with me, and Trump will have no choice.
So the Samson option, could you explain that for everyone, Larry?
That means if I'm in, and Golda Meir talked about this in 1973. In fact, it wound up the BBC reporter talking to Golda Meir. He put it into the London Times, as I recall. It was on the front page the next day. He asked her the question, would you use a nuclear weapon if you were in peril? Yes, she said, without blinking an eye. Well, the Samson option is what that is in terms of, you've heard of the Hannibal doctrine and other doctrines the Israelis have. The Samson option, remember, he pulls the temple down around himself in order to kill his enemies. That's what we're talking about. You remember the Roman 10th Legion and being around the base of Masada when they had pushed the Jewish rebels up on top of the mountain and they all committed suicide. That's what we're talking about here. And there are some people like Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich and some of the other people around Netanyahu. These are people who would commit suicide for their idea of Zionism.
That is crazy.
Tell me about it. And taking the world with them in some respects, because we're looking at Pakistan with nuclear weapons and having made a pact with Tehran. We're looking at Russia now with a formal defense pact with Iran. We're looking at China behind Russia, all nuclear armed powers. And we're also looking at Ukraine, where Russia is just on the edge of doing something really drastic because of what we're doing to them in Ukraine.
It's very scary. This is why I keep telling people are like, oh, I don't care about what's happened in foreign policy. You should.
You should. It might come to your front door next week.
Yeah, it's very, Larry, let me get your take on this. From your experience, like working in Washington, do you feel like there is a shift that is happening, at least on the Israel perspective, compared to when you were there?
Absolutely. I didn't think I would see this in my lifetime, but it is happening, and it's happening much more swiftly than I thought. When Marjorie Taylor Greene gets up in the House and says what she said, and when Tom Massey is listened to more when he says what he says, and when you've got people like, I've known Seth Moulton since he left Harvard and joined up after 9/11 to be a Marine and a really outstanding Marine in the Afghan war. And I've known him since he started looking at possibly the Senate. I've had some problems with him from time to time because he didn't seem to be quite the person I thought he was. But this latest move is, I think, a positive move for him. It's calculated, no question about it, but it's a positive move, and it's a move that's needed. And we need more people in the Congress, more than any other body of our government, to start distancing themselves from Israel and from the policy that we've used now for 50 years of using Israel to do our dirty deeds in Southwest Asia. I mean, it's not beneficial anymore. It's not beneficial for the empire, our empire, to become the massively colonial entity that Britain was at the end of its reign, because that's what brings you down. But that's really what we've become, a massively colonial power. Look at what we're doing to Venezuela. Look at what we're doing to other places in Latin America. Look at what we're doing in other places where you don't even know and I can't talk about, in East Africa, for example. We have become the massive colonial power of the face of the earth, and there's probably 2/3 of the world now that recognizes that and is essentially extending the middle finger to us. And that's what BRICS is all about. That's what all this tension is in the world about, whether or not the dollar is going to remain the transactional and reserve currency. No, it's not. We have people now trading in massive amounts of oil. We have them trading in yuan. We have them trading in Chinese currency. And it's only going to deepen and become more profound a change because the pipelines that are being built out of Russia, for example, into China, all of that product is going to be denominated not in dollars, as has been the case since World War II, really. It's going to be denominated in renminbi, yuan, Chinese currency, or some other currency until one of them becomes transactional in a sense that it gets more coverage across the world. You really do not want to be a power with the reserve currency. If you look at over time, you look at the Dutch guilder, you look at the British pound, you now look at the US dollar, you look at that, that's a recipe for your downfall ultimately, because you gain too much power, you abuse that power, you abuse it financially and economically, and pretty soon the world gets together and moves to join in forces that can balance you. Well, that's what's happening right now. And we're doing what we're doing at our ultimate peril. And so is Europe following us.
What do you think of what's happening with some of the conservative voices that tend to be speaking out against these issues? Also, Marjorie Taylor Greene is now speaking out against cutting the health care. Yep. She said she heard from her constituents, etc. She just signed, I don't know if everybody knows this, but she just signed on to, I guess, this push that includes Ro Khanna, other than the Epstein, pushes them to lower the prescription drug prices here in the United States. So she's signed on to that too. What do you make of all of this?
I think people are listening to their constituents finally. If you look at the number of members of Congress who've gone home recently for a town hall or meeting with their constituents, it's abysmal. But some of them are starting to do it. And what they're hearing from the American people, Republican or Democrat, but it's the Republicans that get the news, is terrible for them. Their prospects of reelection are terrible because of these things that are going on. And most of them, the people see as Trump. They see him and MAGA as having done this. We have people laid off all across the country. My son-in-law at the National Security Agency just got half his salary cut. And all of the people around him, not all of them, but many of them that are fresh hires, they're not getting paid anything. Imagine how they feel. They're young people. A lot of them are military veterans. A lot of them are on their first job out of the military. They've got a wife and maybe a kid or two, and their salary's gone. My son out in Tennessee has just been furloughed. He's in the Air Force. This is rippling across the country. And add to it the incredible change that Charlie Kirk's assassination brought to the MAGA community under 40 years old, and particularly under 30 years old. And you've got a monumental movement in this country to disabuse the United States of its tight relationship with Israel. And you've got antipathy and even hatred forming in the country for the man who puts militia and ICE in your city and tells you that it's for your own good. And when you look at it, you can see clearly it isn't for your own good. I recently had a discussion. I had a discussion with some people. I said, okay, you're telling me that Baltimore is terrible. You're telling me that Philadelphia is terrible and Chicago is terrible and LA is terrible and Portland is terrible. And all these cities you're telling me are terrible. My granddaughter went to school for 4 years in Baltimore. My other granddaughter went to school for 4 years in Chicago. I've been in these cities. I've lived in D.C. or right cheek and jowl with D.C. for 35 years. I don't see anything so terrible about them. I walk down to D.C. I walk around at night from restaurants to whatever. I don't see the crime you see. I don't see the problems that you see. I'm sure there's crime there. I know there's crime there. South side of Chicago, there are more guns on the south side of Chicago than in a military arsenal. And wait until ICE hits that. Then we're going to have Trump having a reason to declare the Insurrection Act in force and mount real operations on our urban centers. And that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to use ICE and the militia to spark an insurrection that he can then take advantage of, call the act into being, and deploy military forces across the country. American people better wake up.
I've been trying to tell people about this. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, my parents are from Baltimore too, so it's like, I mean, it has its good parts and its bad parts and all those types of things, but he's using that as a reason to work towards something greater. And you mentioned Charlie Kirk, and I got to show this to everybody, and I want to get your take on this. A number of people tagged me in this. I didn't know about what was happening with the Google Trends search, but James Lee, he is a contributor on Breaking Points. He was sharing this information that I think was originally shared by Baron Coleman about the Google Trends search prior to the assassination of Charlie Kirk. I want to share this with everyone.
If I told you somebody, maybe multiple somebodies, were searching those terms before September 10th, what do you think about that?
Before the shooting. Well, there's Washington, D.C. at 11 a.m., the day before the Charlie Kirk shooting. And you'll see here where the news finally broke that it was, in fact, Tyler James Robinson. But notice that. That's weird. That's weird.
That is weird, I gotta say. Why would anybody be searching the name Tyler James Robinson one day before he allegedly assassinated Charlie Kirk? The data point is just a tiny blip, but it's there. Tyler James Robinson, right? A name that nobody knew of prior to September 12th, 2 days after the shooting, when the media told us who Tyler James Robinson was, right? A supposed 22-year-old leftist who hated Charlie Kirk. So what does that little Google trend blip mean? Well, I did some research using Google Gemini, and they say Google Trends, what it does is normalize search interest to the region you select. The formula is search interest equals total searches in the region and time divided by total searches for the term. So when you look at things from a nationwide context, the total number of searches is enormous. The small handful of searches for Tyler James Robinson on September 9th is so tiny, a fraction of all the US searches, that it gets rounded down to zero. But then when you zoom in a DC context, if you filter for the District of Columbia, the total search volume is much, much smaller. So if a few searches for Tyler James Robinson on September 9th originated in the DC area, then this handful of searches becomes a significant enough proportion of all DC searches on that day to register a value of 18 out of 100. Then it says, and this part is critical, quote, the fact that the searches are localized to DC, a city synonymous with the federal government, intelligence, national media, and political organizations, strongly shifts the interpretation away from random noise or perpetrator checking his own name, from an ambiguous anomaly into a strong potential signal of pre-event institutional knowledge or activity. That is interesting.
Larry, this story.
It's more than interesting.
This story, and we've been on this show, we've been questioning it since day one. Just things just don't add up to me. But why on earth are people searching for Tyler Robinson's name the day prior to the assassination of Charlie Kirk? Like, this is just, again, it just points to what many of us have been wondering. Okay, this was an inside job, or maybe Israel had something to do with this. It does not make any sense. I still haven't seen any video footage of Tyler Robinson with a weapon in his hand, including when he got off the roof.
Yeah, nor have I. And I've seen a lot of video footage, probably 6 or 7 hours of video footage. And I will tell you right now that if we had this is a positive comment. I find them hard to find these days. If we had had the technology that we have today to go after the Warren Commission, we would have known within 6 months that the Warren Commission was a farce, and we would have known basically who killed John F. Kennedy and how they did it. So the technology we have today, if it's properly used, now I'm not saying that the FBI and others aren't going to get in there and muck it up, because they have counter technology to do just that. But if we had had just clean looks at the Kennedy assassination, the Warren Commission would have been blown out of the water, instantly blown out of the water, because there's so many lies being told in that commission. Lee Harvey Oswald had nothing to do instrumentally with killing John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy was killed by a very sophisticated group of people who probably came from disgruntled CIA, disgruntled military, disgruntled mafia, all in a consortium to assassinate the president. The big question for Kennedy's assassination is, was there any acting government complicity? Read the then president of the United States, who was sworn in as such. We'll never know, probably, but I'm saying that only to say that we do have this kind of technology today. You just saw an example of it. And the film I've looked at, I know they're lying, or they're not, they're obfuscating right now. The FBI has no idea, in terms of its leadership, as far as I know, who killed Charlie Kirk. And that's a problem.
But how did they just get this guy? Like, how did they decide?
They invented him. They invented him. And as that suggested, as that technological look at the blip, as that suggested, they not only invented him, they found him some hours before the assassination.
I think it just, like, it's wild.
It is. And it shows you what the age we're living in right now is both massively capable and beneficial if used properly. But on the other side of that coin, it's massively dangerous if in the hands of someone like Bibi Netanyahu or Donald Trump's people like Steve Miller and Vaught at OMB. You put this stuff in their hands, and they're going to turn it on you, and they're going to use it to increase their power. If it's used as it was being demonstrated there, and I would say in other places where it'd be even more positive, then it's a boon to everything we do. It's a boon to education. It's a boon to economics, finance. But if it's used the other way, it's terrible, because it makes their ability to cheat and to kill and to plunder a lot easier. And then to cover it up.
What do you make of the information that was revealed about a week? I think it's been about maybe a week or 2 weeks now, about the text messages that came from Charlie Kirk, where he said he was walking away from that pro-Israel movement because he had that frustration, obviously, with the donors. What do you make of all that?
I don't know how anyone, having looked at it comprehensively across that week or so of time, could say that Charlie Kirk wasn't going to physically break away from at least many of the massively funded campaigns that supported him coming from Jewish donors, and was thinking seriously about the ironclad relationship with America and Israel and doubting it. No question in my mind that that was developing in his head and developing amongst the young people whom he debated with in those final hours. It was clear from the tapes I've watched and the comments I've heard. And you don't have to listen to Candace or or Tucker or whomever. They help, but basically just listen to what he was saying and how he was answering their questions or trying to answer their questions, especially in that last period he had. And he was beginning to doubt. And he was telling some of the massive donors, no more, no more. And they got mad.
What do you think would have been said if he were still alive today and he would have seen these plans that have been revealed, this Gaza trust plan of what Donald Trump and Elon Musk and Jared Kushner have planned for Gaza to become this billionaire, tax haven? You think it almost seems like he would have criticized that?
It's hard to tell. I didn't know him at all. And I only stumbled upon him after he was assassinated. I didn't even know much about Turning Point USA. I certainly didn't know that it was probably the formidable organization within the political apparatus that got Trump elected. I mean, I think after looking at it thoroughly these last few weeks, Charlie Kirk had more to do with electing Donald Trump than any other single person in America. And I had no idea about the evil thoughts that he had in some respects. I mean, I've seen words that he laid out on the table that were simply vile about other people. But I do think he was coming around. I think I know that he was coming around to understanding how damaging the relationship we had formed with Israel. And remember, I said we're using them as our tool. And therefore, how damaging the White House, the Supreme Court, and the Congress were in supporting that. And he was questioning it to the point where he was going to refuse taking money from some of these people who he knew were buying him. He knew. He was not stupid. That's one thing I'll say about him. He was not stupid. He was a smart young man. He knew he was being bought. And he didn't have a problem necessarily with being bought until he found out why he was being bought. And that gave him a problem. And he began to tell these people to go away. And that got him killed, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. And they tend to get them while they're really young, just like the guy who's now traveling across the country, Hallandale. He's supposed to be doing these campus tours now that Charlie Kirk has passed away. But he's supposed to be doing that. And I notice he's very young, freshman in college. And I remember when I was a freshman in college, I didn't really know who I was. You're starting to get to know like what you like and maybe what you don't like. But you're still growing and your brain is still developing. And that's something I point to, is that they get them when they're young and they feed them this ideology. And it's like forgetting that at some point that person does get older. Well, and they do start to wonder.
Yeah, Netanyahu's techniques, and I shouldn't just say Netanyahu because Benny Gantz would be doing the same thing. Their technique is to get inside our schools, get inside our textbooks even. I've seen textbooks revisions in the state of Virginia that fundamentally erase the Palestinians from history books, fundamentally put the Jews there, put the Israelis there, and make them the triumphant party in a land where, at best, you could say the Israelis have as much claim to it as any Palestinian. I mean, and that's strictly from the Bible. If you go from history, the Palestinians have a far greater claim to it than the Israelis do. And they're changing that in our textbooks. They know that they're losing and they need to get the young people back on board. And you need to get the young people back on board from elementary school all the way up through high school and college. You got to get them back on. They watch these protests on the campuses. Columbia, for example, some of the most vociferous, eloquent protesters were Jewish Americans. So they know they're losing their own youth in America too. So you stand by for this massive campaign, well-funded, that's going to go all across the country trying to recoup this and recover it. I think they're going to fail. I think the American people are waking up, especially the young people.
I don't think the genie can be put back in the bottle at this point.
I don't either.
Interesting. Well, Larry, thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Again, anything you have coming up that you want to promote?
Well, it just happened. No kings. You know, it was really amazing to be standing out on Leesburg Pike in Falls Church and see thousands of people coming out with their signs and everything, give them the thumbs up, honk the horn and everything else. But I'm thinking the whole time, this is the road, the Leesburg Pike. This is the road that George Marshall drove out about once a week from that newly built Pentagon during World War II out to his home in Leesburg. And then he continued to do that when he was Secretary of Defense and Secretary of State. And I'm thinking to myself, what would George Marshall think driving through all these placards saying, no kings, no kings? He would have said, what the hell are they talking about? This can't be happening in America. But I was glad to see that people finally getting out.
Interesting. I have some criticisms about the no kings protest, which is they didn't come up with like demands, like on the website. They don't have like these full demands.
Yeah.
I think it could go a step further.
It will. I think it will. It doesn't have a whole lot of organization right now. Just getting the people out in the streets in numbers is something. I remember when I was in London in 2003 and I saw the greatest war protest, anti-war protest I think I've ever seen. Later, people at the BBC would tell me it was the biggest one in the Western world ever. There were 2.5 million Londoners out in the streets. Bobby's horses couldn't move. I was standing by one Bobby on a beautiful horse, and I felt for the horse because the horse was getting panicky. He couldn't move. He couldn't pick his feet up. He couldn't do anything. And the Bobby couldn't get off of him because people were just everywhere. It was like the fireworks display on New Year's Day down at the Thames, only much more. It was incredible. And that didn't stop the war. It didn't stop the war, but it certainly showed something.
Yeah, I hear you. Larry Wilkerson, thank you so much for your time.
Surely. Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Take care.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that was Colonel Larry Wilkerson. He's been on the show before. Great to have him on. Again, another powerful anti-war voice. We have more stories to discuss with you, ladies and gentlemen. And tonight's theme is gatekeepers. Gatekeepers. They are out there all over the damn place. And we're going to get into all of that as well. First and foremost, let's go ahead and give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. Really do appreciate you, fam. If you are interested in being a patron, I have 5 categories. Ultimate, Sabinators, they're Sabsters. They're pretty cool. We also have a group called Sabbies. Yeah, man. Don't forget about them. And last but not least, there is a group called members. All of their names are featured here, and you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. Thank you guys so much. All right. I sound like Matthew McConaughey now. All right. Let me just pull this here. There we go. Okie dokie. Again, the theme tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is gatekeepers. Yes, they're everywhere out there. Let's go to some of the comments here. Shout out to Amber Reeves for becoming a new member. Let's give Amber a big whoop whoop. Yeah. Thank you for the super sticker, Michael McIntyre. A kid says salute to Sabby for 270K subs. Thank you so much, a kid. Thank you. And thank you to all of you. Thank you, Nia. Could Congress have been aware that there would be an attack? Good question. And thank you for this one, Nia. Participants must understand the unique situation facing Israel at the border with the Gaza Strip, Lebanon, and Syria, all Iranian proxies. From an Israel trip agenda for Glenn Ivey and his wife dated September 1st, 2023 through September 10th, 2023. Interesting. Thank you for the super sticker, James. And thank you for the super chat, Measured Man. See how they used AI to blame the Black kids for the ICE video. Please teach your kids accountability safely before they learn algorithms. I speak to my sons daily. yeah, it's a different generation, a new day, right? Like when I was a kid, we didn't have social media, so we didn't have to worry about these things, Shout out to Oz. The human brain does not reach full maturity until past the age of 25. There you go. There you go. And thank you for the super sticker, Jay. Thank you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're diving to the next story. Again, the theme is gatekeepers. Gatekeepers. And let's get into this no kings situation. So on Saturday, there were protests all over the United States against Donald Trump called No Kings. This is the second wave of the No Kings protest. There were No Kings protests over the summer. So they were doing this yet again. I'm going to tell you the good. I'm going to tell you the bad. We're going to get into a mixture of it. But I do want to start by showing you some of the highlights from those protests. This part I thought was really interesting. It came from a group of kids in New York. The kids are paying attention, guys. The teenagers, they're paying attention. They are chanting, "Release the Epstein files" at the New York City, the New York City No Kings protest.
Release the Epstein files! 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 Release the Epstein files!
Yeah, even the kids know. Even the kids know, ladies and gentlemen, right? Yeah, even they know. We're going to go to another vid here. This is the funniest one of all that I've seen so far. If you have kids in the room with you, you might want to cover their eyes for just a second, but this is hilarious. Someone in Portland, of course it had to be Portland, Oregon. It had to be Portland. Someone in Portland decided to dress up during these protests as a giant wiener, and not the kind you put mustard on.
Mr. Richard. Mr. Richard.
His sign said, "Eat a bag of," He's just walking down the street, balls and all. I don't Again, of course, in Portland, Oregon. Nancy Pelosi, I guess, got in on this a little bit. I think you guys will see after this. Nancy needs to retire. Look at this.
Gonna tear up the crown. Gonna tear up the crown.
Yeah, it's time for Nancy to retire. It is time. And it's so funny when she does that, because it seems like, in her mind, she's like, she did something. Like, because here's the thing. When we talk about no kings, right? We talk about tearing up crowns. It's not just about kings, because the reason why Donald Trump won, let's go into that. How did you get Donald Trump for 2024 anyway? How did he win again? He won again because the Democratic Party didn't do what they were supposed to do for the working class. They didn't pass these policies that greatly would impact the working class. And the few that they did pass, they stopped it short, like the child tax credit, for example, right? So in order to be a full opposition party, you have to deliver for the working class people. So that's how you get a Donald Trump back in. Then two, of course, the Gaza situation. The Democratic Party should have been better on that. They should have been, against genocide. No, because they're complicit too. They're complicit. They want Israel to be there. They, support what's happening to the Palestinian people. And they really did not expect the outrage that came in the streets. So there's that. But here's the other part. You don't get the kings without the billionaires. You don't get the kings without the billionaire class, which Nancy Pelosi supports. The Democratic Party as a whole supports the billionaires. They're the ones that are throwing money out here, buying politicians, trying to throw elections. Bill Ackman just made the announcement a couple of days ago. He's putting millions of dollars to try to stop Zoran Mondani from winning mayor in New York City. Now, you don't have to like Zoran, but it's the billionaires that are doing a lot of the control, ladies and gentlemen, and they have a lot of money to spend. So instead of no kings, I'd say, where's a protest that says no billionaires? you know, but they're not going to do that. And they can't do that because they are complicit too. They also take money from billionaires. That's the problem with the Democratic Party. And that's why it's not a true opposition party. You can't really say the Republicans are bad and corrupt. They take billionaire money, because the Democratic Party is also bad and corrupt and takes billionaire money. If they didn't, then they would have a stronger position. So that's the problem there. Mehdi Hassan spoke at the No Kings rally in D.C.
Donald Trump, the man who uses Palestinian as a pejorative, as a slur, has no plan for Palestinian freedom, no plan for Palestinian statehood, no plan for justice for the Palestinians who have been massacred and starved and genocided and ethnically cleansed for the past 2 years, including the past 9 months of his presidency. Meanwhile, Israel for the past week has violated the ceasefire again and again, killing Palestinians with impunity. Yesterday they killed 7 Palestinian children during the ceasefire. There is no peace in the Middle East because, as Dr. King said, peace is not just the absence of violence, it is the presence of justice.
So I'm glad that someone who had a speaking role was able to speak about Gaza, because that was not a part of the No Kings protests. When they talked about, I'll show you the website in a second and you'll see that Gaza isn't even on there. They mention other countries, but they don't mention Gaza. After we watched a live stream genocide for over 2 years, that wasn't even mentioned on the website for No Kings. Now, I will say this. I'm glad that he brought that up there because, like I said, they didn't have it like on the website. But when you see who was attached to this, I think you'll understand why. I will say, I do wish that Mehdi Hassan would have had that same speech at one of the pro-Palestinian protests that was under the Biden-Harris administration. And this is some of the pushback that I have with those who continue to support and amplify the Democratic Party. You need to hold both parties accountable. And the problem is, a lot of times, because people are like, well, it's my party, so I don't want to go too hard on them. Granted, he did criticize what Biden and Kamala were doing at that time. He said, listen, stop, like, get a ceasefire, da-da-da. He did say those things, but it would have been nice if Mehdi Hassan would have been one of those speakers at those pro-Palestine protests in DC. Maybe like, I don't know, the first one that had over 500,000 people there. So that's the thing. Like, I have been noticing this, guys. Some of the people who told me to shush when this was happening under Biden and Kamala, now they're speaking out about it. But if you really care about the people and if you are against genocide, you shouldn't sit up there and just speak out about it when it's the other party that's doing it. You got to speak out under both parties. That's the problem that I have with the partisan politics, right? So here was another sign that was at the No Kings protest. This sign here. If Kamala were president, we'd be at brunch. You know, the sad thing about this is that sign is true. If Kamala would have won, all of them would have went right back to brunch and they would ignore everything that's happening right now. That's true. Because I saw that happen under Biden. When Biden won in 2020, it's like, oh, well, it's not Trump, so whatever, we're going back to brunch. That's a sad thing, right? So they are openly letting you know that if Kamala Harris would have won, they would have not held her accountable. We got a problem here, folks. We got a problem here. Now, here's the thing. I love a good protest. I'll be the first to tell you. I love seeing people out in the streets. I do. I do at the same time think it's important to point out what are the demands, who's sponsoring it, what's the message that's being across, right? Where's the consistency, especially on an issue like genocide? But there was something else that was pointed out. And I got to say something. Eric Daughtry, by the way, this is a right-wing account. I do have to say that so people are aware, but he has a point that he shows here. This is the No Kings in Atlanta, Georgia, a city where the largest racial demographic by far is Black people, ... white. 90% plus of the crowd is white, filled with retirees every single freaking time, he said. Let's look at the video here.
Unite to protect us, just in case universities try to teach us, just in case protesters try to show up and remind us of who we are. They go after step 8 and try to break civil society. because they're preparing us for step 9. There are 10 steps to protecting our patriots. There are 10 steps to protecting our democracy. There are 10 steps to protecting our right.
So first and foremost, again, there were Black people at some of these protests. Do we show up like that in mass? No. No, you won't see a lot of us out there. and there's many reasons, there are some who will tell you that we just kind of feel like, why should we go out there? Why should we do that? Some will tell you we're tired. We don't feel like going out there for all this. Others may say, well, no, I'm not trying to go out there and get arrested. Even at some of the peaceful protests, I've seen people get arrested. I've seen that in person. So that's the other thing. Also, a lot of us are at work. This is another thing. So this is a class issue too. A lot of people don't realize. They're like, well, the protest was on a Saturday. Yeah. Some of us work on Saturdays. Think about some of the jobs we have. People don't think about this. I mean, think about it this way. If you work retail, if you are a bartender, waiting tables, etc. Like I know when I waited tables, I didn't have Saturdays off unless I requested it off. So a lot of us, that's another part. Some of us are at work. And then you got to think, okay, should I take off from my job to go to this protest or should I, go to work because I got bills to pay? These are just realities. Also, a lot of times at these protests, when police show up, we know we're more likely to be targeted. So I understand it. Like, this is another thing. And some people online were like, why aren't more Black people there? And da-da-da-da. And I'm like, yeah, a lot of times we don't want to put ourselves at risk like that. Because like I said, we'd be the first ones that get the police come. We'd be the first target. So there's that. But ultimately, I think, when you look at the way the exit polls, just look at the exit polls from 2024. And I voted third party. And there are many of you that did too. But that's not what I'm talking about. If you look at the exit polls, for as many times as people pointed their fingers, Barack Obama pointed his fingers at Black men, the problem is you brothers and all this kind of stuff, not supporting Kamala Harris, the exit polls show the majority of Black voters voted for Kamala Harris. Yes, Trump did make gains with Black men. According to the exit polls, yes, he did. He did have increases there. But as a whole, the majority of Black voters voted for Kamala Harris. That's just what it shows. So a lot of times Black people just look and feel like people have been yelling at us. They point their fingers at us and said, you guys didn't show up. That's not true. The numbers don't show that. Did we show up the way that, we may have for Obama or Biden or Hillary? No. But I think that says something about the candidate that the Democratic Party chose and selected, because there was no primary. Let's just keep it real. I think that says something about the candidate. But a lot of times, to be honest, Black people just tired. Black people like, yeah, I don't know, bud. I don't ever want to risk my neck out there like that, guys. I don't know, man. I don't know. Now, just to show you a comparison, this was shared by Isaac Bryan. No, this isn't a No Kings rally. This is the Taste of Soul on Crenshaw Boulevard yesterday in Los Angeles. See the difference? Yeah. See the difference? There you go. So it just, and some people are mad. Some people are mad, like, Black people, you should have been out there. How dare you not participate? Okay. When the police come and they decide to start to arrest people, are you going to bail us out of jail? It's things like that. Now, for me, I'm one, like, I like going to protests. That's just me. But the reality is, everybody don't feel comfortable putting themselves in that position. And I think also Black people, particularly Black people who voted for the Democratic Party, some of them feel some kind of way after the way that, they were spoken to for supporting the Democratic Party. These are things that have been said to me, in privately and also on this show by other people as well. Because I didn't vote for Kamala or Donald Trump. I voted third party. So you can imagine the things that were said to me. Okay, so yeah, that's some of the problem. You don't really see us out there lately, there's that. But Cory Booker was out there, him of all people. Yeah, I think he's going to try to run for president again. He just proposed to his girlfriend, who is not Rosario Dawson, but looks very much like Rosario Dawson, who was his ex-girlfriend. Listen to this.
This is amazing. We've got more than 250,000 people already, and I can see it's growing. We're out here today to really just say that Donald Trump, his authoritarian tendencies, what he's trying to do is absolutely wrong. We have a nation right now where people, their ability to meet their everyday needs grow more and more difficult. And we have a president that doesn't seem to care, frankly, just continue corruption that's all about his own pockets. This is wrong. It has to be about everyday Americans.
Yeah, the problem with this is that, Corey, you participate in a lot of the corruption because he participates. He took all this money from AIPAC. I don't remember seeing Cory Booker at any protest. The pro-Palestinian protest, of course not, because he takes all that money from AIPAC. This is about Cory Booker putting his face and his name out there because he's probably going to pursue another presidential run because he ran in 2020. He's going to pursue another presidential run in 2028. And I think that's what this is really all about here for Cory Booker. So that's the problem. That's what I said before. The Democrats, and especially the ones like Cory Booker, you really ain't got that much to say because you were part of the corruption as well. Now, here was something that was called out. Some of the socialist organizations also participated in the No Kings protest. And I got to tell you, this was very concerning. Listen, Kala said this. It's very concerning that socialist organizations' response to the Trump regime is to ally with the genocidal Democratic Party and portray Trump as a unique evil rather than to build an independent, united front against fascism, which was equally necessary under the Biden regime. So shout out to Kala there for that. This is the Party for Socialism and Liberation, also known as PSL. They were telling people to join the No Kings protests, and they were a part of it. So there was kind of this meltdown on social media from people who are, the socialists, because they're just like, why is PSL participating in this event with the Democratic Party? Like, what are you doing? Right now, granted, PSL was very, very much involved in pro-Palestinian protests. They were out there. They presented themselves under the Biden-Harris administration as well. But the thing is, with these alternative parties, you're really supposed to present yourself as an alternative to the duopoly, not as okay, well, let's join along with the Democrats or let's join along with the Republicans, like i.e. the Libertarian Party. You're supposed to be an alternative. And if you're not presenting yourself as a true alternative, well, then people will just not take you seriously. And when it comes time when they do run candidates, and they do, people won't take it seriously because they're like, oh yeah, but you're basically a little bit left to the Democratic Party, and they have a chance to win and you don't. So this says something about the third parties, which is something I've been pointing to for a while. If you really want to be an alternative to the Democratic Party and to the Republican Party, you can't just go and align with them at every chance that you get, right? Now, some will also say that some of the socialists, some of the farther left participants of this rally participated because they wanted to get their voice out. They wanted to talk to all the people that were at these rallies, and they wanted to say, let me tell you what we should be doing instead of what the Democratic Party is doing. In fact, this guy here is a perfect example. He wanted to hold Cory Booker accountable. And Cory Booker is in this video, you'll see. So apparently that's why he's there. Listen to this.
Senator Cory Booker, why do you still take money from AIPAC? Okay, why does he take money from AIPAC? Has he talked to you about it?
Yeah, he takes people that are Jewish, whether it's from J Street or AIPAC. He doesn't segregate people out.
Happy to take the same money that Republican donors, the same ones who put Trump in office, are also taking? I don't think that people who work for AIPAC or are associated with AIPAC, who take money and organize with the values of AIPAC, should be Democrats. I don't think that we should be associated with them. I think that they are associated with what's happened in Gaza over the past 2 years and support for an apartheid state. If you're an Israeli Jew, you are first-class citizen. Anyone else has different status. that is an apartheid state, and I don't think that anyone who is a Democrat out here for a No Kings rally, who's here for democracy, should be for that. We wouldn't be okay with that here in the U.S. That's what the whole civil rights movement was about, was saying that you can't have first-class and second-class citizens. And that is what we are opposing in Israel, and that is what AIPAC and people who are associated with AIPAC are trying to say is okay. I'm Jewish. I think that there should be one state, as the United States is, in which everyone is afforded the same rights, the same democratic rights, the same civil rights, the same rights under the state to be able to vote and choose representation. That means Israelis, that means Palestinians, that means Jews, Muslims, and Christians, that means everyone. Israel right now is an apartheid state. And I don't think that any Democrat who says that they are for democracy should support it.
So he was there to present the actual left position. So that's why some of them were there. And I thought it was important that you guys hear what he said, that the Democratic Party should not be aligned with AIPAC in any way, shape, or form. And that he said he supports one state where everybody has equal rights. And this is something I think that's important to bring up. As much as Cory Booker does talk about civil rights and all this type of stuff, you don't support civil rights abroad, though. You know what I mean? Because if you're backing Israel, you don't support that. You don't support equality. So you can't have it both ways. So that's why some of them were there. They were like, this is my chance to get this message across. So I did want to make sure that people saw that as well. And here's another one. Brenton, I just handed out 300 of these in only an hour at No Kings in Bellingham, Washington. And he is part of the Workers Against Fascism, ready to distribute our own article at No Kings tomorrow. So some organizations came there to basically hand out their own booklets, their own brochures for their organizations. They say, okay, maybe this is my opportunity to approach some of the liberals and to tell them why the Democratic Party is not moving in the right direction. This was my chance to get that out to them. So that actually, I understand that position because, again, there's a lot of people there. So that's your opportunity to get that across to more people. And I think that's why some of those socialist organizations were there. Maybe not necessarily to align themselves with the Democratic Party, but to give people another option. And if you hover over Workers Against Fascism here, it says Revolutionary Marxist Strategy. So that is a Marxist worker organization that went to that rally to get their name out. So I think that's important for people to see as well. But you also need to see who was also behind the scenes of this, because there's a lot of neocon support, and this is very damning. Max Blumenthal said No Kings, the Democrat-oriented protest group organizing anti-Trump rallies this Saturday, urges protesters to wear yellow ribbons inspired by a NATO-backed color revolution in Hong Kong and the Ukraine proxy war. No Kings messaging does not include opposition to U.S.-Israeli wars. And you can see it here. Why we wear yellow, historical context. Hong Kong, protesters carried yellow umbrellas as acts of protest. Again, this is one of those color revolutions. So it's important for people to know some of these uprisings that you see in other countries are actually color revolutions. They're backed by the US, and it's a way to basically to get away for the younger people to turn against the current people in power in those countries. And then the West can just come in and use as an excuse and say, we're going to overthrow your leader now and install the puppet that we want. So this is important for people to know. Asia, yellow ribbons become emblems of hope, accountability, and systemic reform after South Korea's Seoul ferry tragedy. Yellow ribbons, they go there, yada, yada, transparency, justice. And Eastern Ukraine, the yellow ribbon movement reclaimed the color as a signal of resistance and national self-determination amid invasion. So notice what you don't see. Notice you don't see Gaza there at all. That's why I think it's important people pay attention. When you look at the details, when I looked at their website, that was very telling. Genocide been happening for over 2 years, and you don't even mention Gaza. So that goes to tell you who is behind the No Kings protest, the fact that they can't even call out the genocide. When we get to the neocons that are attached to this event, as you'll see as well. Home of the Brave, a group of neocons like Bill Kristol, ex-FBI officials, and wealthy corporate GOP lobbyists is kicking in $1 million to promote No Kings and steer it to the pro-war center right. Their first and bizarrely equates Donald Trump with Hugo Chavez. So I'll click on some of the pictures here. Home of the Brave launches a new $1 million ad campaign to support the No Kings rally. So remember when I told you, pay attention to where the funding is coming from? And here we go. You got Bill Kristol, neocon, warmonger. Barbara Comstock, former member of Congress representing Virginia's 10th district. Wait till you see the rest of them. Hold on. Susan Rice, another neocon, part of the Obama administration, served as domestic policy advisor to Joe Biden. You see all these neocons? Wait for it. George Conway. George Conway. Yes. Him of all people. So that's what this really is. That's who's backing it. And I think the big flag was when Hillary Clinton was like, yes. Let's go to the No Kings. Let's go to the. That's the big one. Something else that James Lee shared I thought was interesting. No kings except for our king. See, people forget this. In 2012, liberals want Obama to be a king, not a president. But we're saying no kings today, right? They're saying no kings today. So if you look at the website, one of the things that I notice is there are no demands on this website. No kings, no thrones, no crowns, no kings. Cool. What are the demands? So we'll just see. And I went through the whole website. So it's like, yeah, people are protesting, right? So they're talking about Trump is abusing power. And you can protest against Donald Trump, but what are the demands? Right? What are the demands? That's how you know. And so for me, I was like, yeah, buddy, no demands. They have know your rights. They have alliance. I went through the whole thing, but they don't have any demands. So I thought Thea here had the right idea. No kings. How about no insurance companies, no medical debt, no student loan debt, term limits, affordable housing, the full Epstein list, cheaper gas, affordable housing, a livable planet, a living wage, an end to genocide, some basic humanity. Yeah, what are the demands? So how could they have taken this a step further, right? And really excite the people even more? I don't know. How about no billionaires? No corruption. Ooh, actually, no corruption would have also brought out conservatives too, I think. They don't want that. That's the other thing you need to pay attention to. Because we can actually have a class movement in this country, but that is going to mean that people are going to have to put their partisan bullshit aside for like 1 or 2 days and just protest for, economic reasons. So that right there, that's the kicker. There were no demands. So that's how you know, right? Like the 11 demands. FM said maybe if they had, say, demands like 11 of them, right? Like the 11 demands that Eric came up with, right? So that's how you know, guys. That's how you know. But they're gatekeepers, right? So when it is sponsored by neocon, elite, pretty wealthy people, they're not going to allow that rhetoric to come in. They're not going to allow the no billionaires, no corruption. And when you're not a full opposition party, I mean, I guess you can't really say no corruption because you corrupt too. So that's a big part of the problem. But the gatekeeping, I think, is what prevents us from going even further. And that is something I do want to speak out more about this year, is the gatekeeping in different spaces and how that works and why people are willing to attack someone who has an economic platform that is going to benefit the working class, Democrats will attack them more than they even attack someone that's a part of Trump's administration. Because even though these protests are happening against Donald Trump, at the end of the day, all of these neocons still want to protect the status quo. So if that means that the choice is between Donald Trump or a Donald Trump-like figure and a Zoran Mandami, they're going to attack Zoran Mandami even more. You see what I'm saying? The gatekeepers. Eric, can we go to part 2? Let's go to some of the comments here, ladies and gents. All right. Thank you for the super chat, Kinman. No kings equals Seinfeld protest, a protest about nothing. Thank you, Resurrect. 53% white women and 48% white men voted for Trump, thus he won. There you go. Thank you, Bourbon, for the super sticker. And thank you, Wandy, who's been a member for 3 months. No king's protest is problematic. We don't have a king. Protest for free health care, no genocide, free university, don't mess with children. See, those are actually demands. Thank you, Chip. The fact that Nancy Pelosi and Cory Booker are part of No Kings means it's just more partisan BS and not for me. Thank you, Baby Ethernet. Blaming Trump for all our problems has expired. Thank you, Jay. I would have taken these rallies seriously if they made demands like no war with Iran, leave Venezuela alone, and no more weapons and intelligence for Ukraine. This was for the blue no matter who folk. Yeah. Thank you, Kinman. No kings, most useless since the Women's March. And thank you, Randy. So basically, this was a rehash of the Vagina Hat March of 2017. But even then, like, I was like, what are the demands? All right, this is a big thing. As someone who is an activist and organizer, that is a big thing I ask. What are the demands? Okay. Okay. If you haven't had a chance to do so, folks, can you smash the like button? Thank you. All right. And if you're new, don't forget to like, sub, and share, just like a Care Bear. And we're moving on to another gatekeeper. This is a funny one. Okay. Angela Rye. Every now and then she pops in to co-host on The Breakfast Club, but she is a part of a different podcast called the Native Land Podcast, where it's her, Tiffany. I always forget Tiffany's last name, but you guys know what I'm talking about. Angela Rye, Tiffany, and Andrew Gillum. Andrew Gillum ran for office a couple of years ago. And so they have this podcast called the Native Land Pod. And there's another podcast called the Joe Budden Podcast. Joe Budden was a rapper, has his own podcast. It's independent. Native Land Pod is not. Hold on to that for a second. So when we talk about gatekeeping, it's this idea, even among Black people, there's gatekeeping in the Black community as well. And a lot of it can be classist. And what Angela Rye has said, to me, comes off as very classist. Now, this has to deal with Mark Lamont Hill also being a co-host on the Joe Budden podcast, which, of course, is different from what he does on Al Jazeera, is different from what he does on his YouTube channel, and from when he used to be on CNN. Yeah, it's different. It's more laid back. It's more chill. It is the #1 urban podcast in the country. Okay? Not the Breakfast Club, this one. And so when you go into a different environment, you're going to talk about different things, and you may behave a little bit different way. Just like the same way that I would be at the office is not the same way that I'm going to be with my friends. It's that type of difference. But Angela Rye apparently doesn't think that Mark Lamont Hill should be spending his time with Joe Budden's podcast. Let's go ahead and get into it. I kid you not, man. The gatekeeper of gatekeeping is Angela Rye. Diamond said, this is absolutely disgusting. Angela Rye judging the podcast from a clip is just nasty. Joe Budden podcast gives Mark so much space and love and allows him to really dictate the flow of the pod. Her comments are so condescending and it's gross. Here comes the bouginess, folks.
To have conversations that stretch, or to have conversations where they at least can appreciate a different perspective. I don't know that I'm into that. So I just want Mark to know I'm praying for you, brother. You know that. And I want better for him. I think that he deserves to hold space with people who are at least more compassionate and more eager to learn from his perspective. And clearly, you can take a Negro out the hood, but you can't take the hood out the Negro. So you might not want to keep leaping at Mark. He might just snap and bust your ass next time. I don't know. I don't want him to do that. But to have conversations.
Let's talk about this compassion that she mentioned here. You know, a lot of people who came to know of Angela Rye, if they weren't familiar with her, was when she was a co-host on The Breakfast Club and she interviewed Dr. Jill Stein and Butch Ware when they were running for president for 2024. And that was a very heated conversation. And Butch and Jill schooled Angela Rye because Angela Rye, for those who are not aware, yeah, she was a lawyer. She's a Democratic strategist. So she spent time on the Hill. You need to understand this. Walk with me here. She's friends with Kamala Harris, as she said so herself. On The Breakfast Club, she's her friend. And so they bring in Angela Rye as kind of like this setup, I guess, to try to like get Jill and Butch Ware and all this type of stuff. And they really schooled Angela and said, this is what we should be fighting for. And what you're pushing with Kamala is milquetoast and is not going to help the working class people. Look, to wrap that up very quickly. What I have noticed about her, and in particular, those who are in that boule space, the black boule space, they seem to have this perception that if you are a black academic, you should not be hanging out with them folk. You should be conversating in spaces with other like-minded black academics like yourself, as if Mark Lamont Hill doesn't already do that. He does do that. But the fact that he's over there with Joe Budden and it's an urban podcast and they crack up a little bit and they joke and all this kind of stuff. She also seemed to have a problem with one of the comments that was made about when Mark was talking about he's lost friends in Gaza. And then, you know, Joe Budden was like, oh, that again, that type of thing, and went on to a different topic. And she seemed to have a problem with that. Angela Rye seemed to have a problem with that, which is hilarious to me because you didn't seem to have a problem with it when Jill and Butch were on The Breakfast Club and they were talking to you about the Palestinian people and they were telling you how all those kids and stuff were being killed and dying. You didn't have a problem with it then. You folded your arms and said, but my friend Kamala. So you can't just have compassion for people when it suits you to do so politically, Angela. When we talk about gatekeepers, I'm talking about people like her too. This idea that if you are a black academic, you need to stay in those spaces and only those spaces only. And how dare you go talk to the black people who don't have a degree? How dare you go talk to the ones who are hood, as she put in this video? Let me tell you something, okay? Let's make it very clear, because I've been on both sides. My parents didn't go to college. My grandparents didn't go to college. My parents grew up in the hood in Baltimore. I went to college. I was able to make, you know, a good life for myself. I'm not rich. I'm not poor. I'm getting by. I still got student loan debt. But this idea of that we should only be amongst our certain class in the black community is part of the reason why we have these fractions and we don't get further than we could because of the things that Angela Rye is saying. This bouginess, stick your nose up in the air attitude is part of the reason why the Democratic Party is losing support with the black community, because you don't want to go into those areas because your friend Kamala didn't want to go to the hood. You see what I'm saying? I'm going to look my nose down at these people because they speak this way. You sound like the gatekeepers in the professional managerial class that do the same thing to you. There were white gatekeepers in the PMC class that did the same thing to you because you were black, regardless of how much education you had. So the black boule is a problem. And I've been calling this out for quite some time because I have been on both sides. I know what it's like to go to an inner city school. I also know what it's like to go to school overseas. And everybody, unlike you, Angela, can't go to college and become a lawyer. And you look down on your nose at the people, the very same community, because they don't talk like you, because they're not as educated as you. Joe Budden did respond to her. I think we need to see that. It starts with Mark Lamont Hill here, because they did issue a response.
In the aftermath of my contretemps with Flip last week.
Yahoo?
He's
doing it now. He's doing it.
Yeah, he's doing tricky words. Tricky words. There was a lot of media that came out, but one of the big pods that I saw respond to it, and I just heard it this morning on the way in, was the Native Land Podcast, which is a podcast with Andrew Gillum, former mayor of Tallahassee, Angela Rye, formerly of CNN Media Mogul.
Mark, if you're going to do it and give your friends a whole bunch of respect.
Tiffany Cross, and I gave y'all a chance to do it.
All right, yo, check this out. Check this out. No, because he's being too respectful for me.
We gonna turn up. He's supposed to. We gonna turn up.
Yeah, but I don't want to. They're so big and say they last.
Anyway, let me finish the thought. I'll just say this. They put a podcast out responding to what happened between Flip and me, and they offer different perspectives on it. I thought they were generally respectful, and I agree with a lot of what was said. Some of it I had a slightly different take on. But they were basically using this as a kind of launching pad to talk about a bigger issue, which they saw was the dumbing down of America. I think the episode was called the Joe Budden Podcast and the Dumbing Down of America.
That's what they called the title. Now, obviously, this is a different setting, right? Like Joe Budden Podcast, it's urban, it's different, a little bit more chill, relaxed, that type of thing. And they did call it, they titled it, by they, I mean Native Land Pod, they titled it The Dumbing Down of America. They went there.
Shit. And they were saying that the exchange between me and Flip is evidence of that. Now, as I said earlier in the show, I don't agree with that part of it.
It's just not in his head, so I think he does.
Yeah.
Well, that's where problem number one arises for me, and then I'll toss it back to Mark. You title it that, and then admittedly say, I don't look at that, because that's not my ministry. See, and that's why I appreciate what Andrew had to say, because he said, one, I'm not familiar with this podcast. I don't watch the clips from this podcast. I assume this is not their frequency every week.
He did.
Thank you, Andrew.
That's the difference, right? So she took that one clip that was on social media and they decided to make it a big thing about it. But Andrew Gillum, who's also part of Native Land Podcast, was like, I don't watch it. I don't watch the Joe Budden Podcast, so I don't really know, right? So that is Joe Budden sitting here. Every time I see him, I think about that song. Let me just make this statement loud and clear. Jersey's here, right? So if you don't watch those things, just say you don't watch those things. But I felt like, again, that was that elitism coming from Angela Rye, which she has done this before. Let's continue.
Thank you, Andrew. That's why you need niggas with brains around. Thank you. That indeed is not our frequency every week. He went on to say, I also trust Mark and his ability to gauge where he should and shouldn't be, who he should connect with and who he shouldn't, to kind of filter out where he's safe at. So I took offense to the sentiment. I took offense to a few sentiments, but one is that I don't love Mark down. I take offense to that. I don't know how much I want to go into love Mark down. Fuck one.
No, it's just it's a bunch of things. I think that the young lady Tiffany. So it's 4 people on the panel.
Mm-hmm. Tiffany Cross. That's her last name. I always forget her name.
2 gentlemen. 2 women. Angela Rye, young lady Tiffany, Bakari, and the old mayor, Andrew Gillum.
Who's your age?
So,
former mayor. If we were a little more,
he ran for governor.
Yes.
Okay. So who I think is dope too, by the way. So a lot of times in these political spaces, a lot of times in the spaces that are quote unquote intellectual, we often look at demographics and we look and pick and choose when we want to play victim and we want to play aggressor. So when the rich white people are doing certain things to us, we cry wolf. I mean, we don't cry wolf, we cry foul. And then we'll take the same exact thing and now shun other people that are less than we are or that we deem less than we are. So when we're in a political space and we see all these rich white people making all these moves and doing all these shit and saying, fuck the masses, I don't care what they think. And then the young lady got on the platform and basically called Flip dumb and said, I don't give a fuck what he thinks. I don't want to hear from him because he's not, in my opinion, credible, or his opinion is not valid. It's the same thing that the white people that oppress us say their opinion is not valid. I don't want to give a fuck about the thoughts of sheep when I'm a lion. So I
pause right here. Let me just add to this part here. I think this is really important. I get tired of hearing the so-and-so's not credible thing. And so Tiffany and Angela to make those comments about another black person who was on a podcast and say, oh, that person's not credible. Why? Because they didn't go to law school? Because they're not a Democrat strategist? Because they didn't work on the Hill? So because they didn't do those things, they're not credible? Because they're not a part of the Black Boule? Because they didn't go to HBCU? So because they didn't tap dance for Hillary Clinton? Like Roland Martin, so because they don't do those things, they're not credible to you? This whole idea that someone has to be this expert of sorts in order to have a mic in front of them, I don't buy it. I don't believe it. Whether you're an expert or something, not people have experiences, people have opinions. And I think people should be able to express that. But when you have a black podcast basically looking down on another one, which I think part of this is jealousy, because this is the #1 urban podcast, is the Joe Budden podcast. The Native Land don't get these numbers. They bring in Bakari Sellers on, I think, to help them. So I think there's some jealousy there. But you're looking down on them, and they already have people bigger than them looking down on them, and you have people looking down on you. So to me, this makes no damn sense. Instead of trying to have some type of unity, let me see how I can tear them down. Oh, quickest way. I'm more educated than them. They don't know what they're talking about. They're not credible. Tiffany Cross spent all those years on MSNBC. And they got rid of her. The moment they didn't want you, they got rid of you. But you were reading a teleprompter. So people can look at you and say, well, you're not credible. You were just reading a script. This is the gatekeeping that I'm talking about. And it does exist in media, also outside of media. But this idea that because of your title, you need to stay in said space and you do not need to congregate with those people over there. That's the bouginess from the Black Boule. And I've had a problem with it for a long time. And more people need to call it out. I don't like it. Let's continue on a little bit more here.
I think that that's a hypocrisy in that. You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
Also, that's what happened with Flip and Mark is contextual. And if you don't watch the pod, which none of them admittedly do, you don't even understand the argument that was taking place.
And this is where my problem comes in the so-called intellectual community and thought process. Not watching or citing your sources is a huge red flag. You can't just spitball some shit and then claim you're an intellectual, or go off a 30-second clip and claim you're an intellectual. Like, if you don't watch the podcast and admit that you don't watch the podcast and admit that you only see it in clip, and I didn't watch their podcast, so I can't speak on that. But if that is indeed the case,
that'd be ironic.
I know, right? Which why I won't have a ton to say in here, but I do have a problem with someone not watching the podcast and having a deep opinion about the podcast.
You don't even know what the argument. You don't know what the argument is about, where the argument came from. You don't know anything.
Well, that's part of where my acceptance of her non-invitation becomes relevant, right? Like Angela, right? I can assure you, like, I've got over 25 years in this business. I can assure you, if you and I are in the same place, it's a mistake on my part. Like, I'm all for people saying who's invited and uninvited places, so I ain't mad at it. But we would never be in the same space.
I disagree with that, and I took offense to that because it was almost saying that, yo, if you aren't this, if you don't have these accolades, I don't even want to communicate with you.
And that's how it is. And this is what I've been saying for quite some time. That's how it is. If you don't have these credentials, I don't want to talk to you. If you don't have, and even then, if you do have those credentials, but you're not saying what is suitable for like the Democratic Party, for example, they don't want to deal with you. Oh no, let's not talk to that person. Angela Rye goes into spaces enough where she was able to say that Kamala Harris is her friend. So that tells you who she hanging out with. She goes into spaces enough where she can hang out with members of the Congressional Black Caucus. She's in those bubbles. And it's almost this mentality that once you're in those bubbles, you're not supposed to talk to people outside of those bubbles, which I vehemently disagree. I think you need to talk to everybody. I don't think it should just be, I'm only going to talk to people that are on my level. That type of attitude and that type of mentality is honestly one of the things that continue, I think, to hold us back. You will see some of the comments to Angela. AJ said, Angela Rye's comments are anti-Black and classist. She was perfectly fine with Mark working for a predominantly white-owned org who fired him for advocating for Palestinians. Come back home to what exactly? White supremacy ? Here's a bit here that Joe Budden says. He goes off a little bit more.
You quote-unquote intellectuals seem to be pulling a lot from places that, again, like it said, you admittedly know very little about. It just comes off away.
Yeah,
it comes off away.
It's like if you put,
especially when you pretending especially when you pretending to do all of this super black kumbaya shit. I got a problem with that too. I got a problem with the people that masquerade as kumbaya, super black, all for the people, and I'll be the first one to tell you how we're different. I come on here every week and say we're less different than we are alike. We just got different ideologies. But I'm not going to keep listening to people who in 25 years, I've never said the name Angela Rye. I don't give a fuck about nothing y'all talking about over there. I'm saying that respectfully. I don't come on here and say a word about any of that shit. I expect reciprocity. You could have titled that clip totally different.
That's true.
Yeah.
Don't claim to be super pro-black and then take the #1 black urban podcast and put that type of stink on it because you think you got a friend over here. That don't give you a license.
They were basically saying they were dumb. The dumbing down of America. They were basically calling Joe Budden and his co-host, they were basically calling them dumb.
I don't think it's that. I don't think if Mark was here or not. I think
if Mark was here, they would never have those conversations.
No,
they having those conversations because their friend is up here.
No, they having those conversations because Mark is deemed an academic and an intellectual, which you
well,
are.
He is, not deemed,
no,
he
no,
is.
no, I said what you are. So now it's, yo, why is he even there? Like Angela Yee said, yo, Mark, just come home.
Angela Rye.
I mean, pardon, Angela Rye said, Mark, just come home.
That's the other beat.
But then you go on to say how diverse Mark is. So I think that that's an insult because you don't put Mark in a box. Mark is home. Mark is a black man sitting in a room with black men that grew up in similar circumstances, albeit we wasn't all in the cult. You can't say
we
he's
all
not
had
home.
our own walks of life.
Yeah, dog. Like I just disagree with that shit. I look
and
at
thank God there was a black-owned, independent media company there to pick up our good brother when he was misunderstood by other outlets.
Talk about it.
Why is that part not being said by pro-black native land people? I'm getting confused.
Yeah,
Mark was a free agent. Y'all had a chance to bring him home.
And didn't.
You didn't.
That's a really good point. When Mark Lamont Hill was let go by CNN because he talked about Gaza way back in the day, when they started Native Land Pod, did they try to pick up Mark Lamont Hill? Did any of these outlets were trying to pick up Mark Lamont Hill when he lost his job? The Joe Budden podcast is independent. Keep that in mind. Native Land is not as a part of iHeart Radio, just like the Breakfast Club. It probably span off of the Breakfast Club, actually, now that I think about it, considering she was one of the co-hosts at one point on the Breakfast Club. But that was the worst part, that come on home. Look, I talk to everybody. We bring people on the show that agree with me on some things. I don't know anyone that agrees with me on everything. I don't agree with anyone on everything, right? We bring people on this show from all walks of life. Sometimes you see other journalists, podcasters, researchers, etc. But then you'll also see me bring on people like the gentleman who came on who just beat the HOA in his neighborhood. We've brought activists on this show. We bring on everybody, people from all different walks of life. I do mutual aid. Like there's a number of us from RBN, we do mutual aid. Like imagine us having that same mindset. Who would we be helping? And then there's this idea of forgetting where you came from. And it's like, no matter how much success you get in your life, never forget where you came from. And especially anything. It's like, I don't like people being put in a bubble, but also this is gatekeeping. You shouldn't talk to these people. You shouldn't talk to, and Mark Lamont Hill, he came onto the show right before the presidential election. He came onto the show. He was a part of a panel. I also went on to his show. Mark Lamont Hill seems to go different places. Like he does talk to different people. But this idea that you shouldn't talk to certain people, that's what I'm talking about. Some of it is political, some of it is classist. And I don't think it should be happening at all. This gentleman here made up a really good point. Lance said, what Angela Rye said about the Joe Budden podcast is exactly why, we ain't gonna say it out on here, is exactly why black men can't advance. And it's crazy since Joe has built one of the largest independently owned black platforms in modern times. Yeah. Angela. Amisha, podcast wars again. I don't think it's a secret to anyone that Budden's podcast runs circles around native land and the audience reach is in another universe. Mark Lamont Hill is there because he wants to reach outside of the academic bourgeoisie, an audience he already has. Well said. You'll look at Native Land Pod here, has a new host. Please join us welcoming Bakari Sellers. So see now Bakari Sellers is a part of Native Land Pod. Right? Now she said all that stuff on there about, she was talking about Gaza. That was one of the things she brought up. And about having compassion, right? Okay. But Bakari Sellers was also an AIPAC puppet. Mr. Pro-Israel Bakari Sellers. So do you see how I say these things that they say don't make any damn sense? Native Land, for the names that they have on that podcast, they should get more views, but they don't. And the reason why they don't is because ain't nobody trying to buy that bullshit. And then also, you just bring it on people who repeat the same thing that you say. You don't bring on people who are different. You just bring on the same people. It's just an echo chamber. And I think people get tired of echo chambers. Joe Budden's podcast, it's an urban podcast. It's a little bit different, but I know I'm going to hear something. I may hear something today that I didn't know about. It's going to be different conversation. But the bougie, classist attitude, that's not going to get you far, man. That's not going to get you far. What a mess. What a mess. Somebody call Common. Call him. Oh my gosh. Let's go to some of the comments and then we'll go to the next story. Thank you for the super chat, Aaron. Why are we funding a welfare socialist state that goes against pro-life values, America first? Well, Israel, I said before, I really do think is just a military base of the U.S. Shout out to Samuel Simmons for becoming a member of Sabby Sabs podcast. Give Samuel a big whoop, whoop. And thank you, Kenman. Angela Rye is awful but attractive. Kim and looking for a date. Thank you, the Thunder Sound. Angela Rye and Kamala Harris rhyme. Beige entitlement in the Black community. Thank you, Thunder Sound. The type of Blacks that think being Greek is somehow Black excellence. Boulay. Skylar said Joe Budden had one mild hit and a featured Christina Milian song in the 2000s and became a big podcaster. Gotta give that man his props because he shouldn't have been more than a trivia question. Oh, the Pump It Up song. Pump, pump, pump it up. Do your thing. Let me do my thing. Thank you for the super sticker, TJ White. Thank you, Baby Ethernet. Rye is dumbing America. Abandon the Democratic Party. And thank you for the shout out. Yeah, thank you for the shout out, Kimi. Shout out, Sabby, looking all skinty. Keep up the good work, both in the gym and the Lord's work you do outside of it. Oh, thank you. Kimi's been a member for 12 months. Let's get the Rumble rant. And then we'll keep it moving. Thank you, Goo, for the rant on Rumble. How did Angela Rye become MJ after 9 months? I don't know. Quick announcement here, ladies and gentlemen. If you're signed up for my Substack, you've probably already received this. If not, it will go out twice this week. Just FYI, I am hosting another mutual aid workshop. That is this Saturday, October 25th at 11 a.m. ET. If you sign up for my Substack, you'll get the details and the Zoom link to join that. So hope to see more of you there. I know some people have already signed up. So that is cool. If you are interested in building dual power and learning how to do mutual aid and doing mutual aid in your community, come attend my workshop. In fact, my comrade JB Font from RBN will be with me as well. Hey. Thank you. Let's keep it moving. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Next story here. Shockingly enough, The Nation published an article revealing a little secret about the Congressional Black Caucus. Now, it's not a secret to me and probably to some of you as well, but they really put the Congressional Black Caucus on blast. They are talking about the CBC's silence when it comes to Israel. And if you're wondering why that is, you only have to do is just follow the money here. If you look at Jim Clyburn, for example, I point him out because he's one of the more older members of the Congressional Black Caucus who claims to be progressive. Jim Clyburn has taken over $203,000 from AIPAC. That's just AIPAC, not all the other lobby interest groups that he takes money from. One of the others I think that kind of goes under the radar is Bakari Sellers. Now, I have talked about Cory Booker, Hakeem Jeffries multiple times on this show about taking that AIPAC money, but someone who kind of flew under the radar a little bit was Bakari Sellers. I'm taking you back 11 years ago. 11 years ago. Listen to what Bakari said back then, how he became close to AIPAC.
Let me ask you something about your engagement with AIPAC, not so much what it does and is, but, well, tell us what it is. And how you became involved in it and what this has meant to your development as a leader.
Well, I got a phone call this summer after I got elected in summer 2004, inviting me to a policy conference where there were...
Summer you got elected?
To the SJ presidency.
Yes.
So summer 2004. Invited me to their national policy conference, and they were inviting SJ presidents, and they were reaching out to HBCU presidents, and they invited 4 HBCU presidents, but the only ones that responded were myself from Morehouse College and Adeola Adejobi, who was an SJ president at Spelman. And we went, and the only other African-American SJ president was from the University of Florida. I can't recall his name. But it might have been 10 black people at the whole conference of 7,500. And I remember one moment that they had the roll call, but I was just so enthralled that we went to this huge dinner that they have, and every member of Congress, or at least 75% of them were there. And I got to, see Steny Hoyer again, who has the best hair in Congress. Uh-huh. And, I got a chance to see Condoleezza Rice and see George Bush. And the unique thing is they had this huge roll call where they notified and they let the crowd know who was there. And they let them know of the SJ presidents they had there, but they left out the only 2 HBCU presidents they had, I didn't even recognize it. But afterwards, the staff, the executive director, this huge organization came and apologized and said, "We'll make it up to you." And I was like, don't worry about it. I don't care. So the next morning, we're sitting in a huge forum waiting on the president, at that time, George Bush, to speak. And after they introduced the president, they had a pause. And they said, "We would also like to recognize, as President Bush stand and wait, we would also like to recognize the SJ president from Morehouse College and Spelman College, Bakari Sellers and Adiola Adejobi. May they please stand." So that attention to detail, and we made President Bush wait even just for that moment, meant a great deal. But from the 50,000-foot view, it's expanded my world horizon. And I challenged them on issues. I challenged them on issues dealing with...
Listen to this. Listen now.
Palestine and the way that they treat the Palestinian government and their aggressiveness towards the Palestinian government. And I say that there are, and their aggressiveness as they move or refuse to move back in terms of some of their settlements and things of that nature.
That was 11 years ago. That was Bakari Sellers saying, well, yeah, I'm in with AIPAC, but I challenged them about, the settlements and the Palestinian people. Okay, that was 11 years ago. But then in 2022, Mr. I challenged them. He was one of the people, just to remind you, he created a PAC to get Rashida Tlaib out of office. PAC to spend $1 million to oust the squad member Rashida Tlaib. Does everybody remember this? That Bakari Sellers was the one who did this? Now, why am I telling you this? Because Rashida Tlaib is the only Palestinian member in Congress. Now, he said he challenged AIPAC 11 years ago. I challenged them about the settlements and their treatment of the Palestinian people. But fast forward to 2022, and he had no problem creating a PAC to remove the only Palestinian American congresswoman. So why is this important? This article that is presented by Politico is damning, and it has been making the rounds, and people are like, uh-oh. The Congressional Black Caucus silent partner with AIPAC. Let's just jump to the nitty-gritty here. Yeah, they called them all out. Called them out. Let's start right about here. They were talking about committing acts of genocide, and it goes into here. Yet to this day, the Congressional Black Caucus, the long-standing core of lawmakers dedicated to safeguarding civil rights, has not issued a formal declaration condemning Israel. It hasn't even produced a statement calling for a ceasefire. The CBC's silence isn't accidental. More than half of its current 61 members have been endorsed or funded by the American Israel Public Affairs Committee, the powerful U.S. lobbying arm for Israel's agenda. In 2023 to 2024 election cycle alone, AIPAC endorsed 26 of the caucus's members, raising $4.6 million for them and another $3.5 million for Black Democratic candidates. By accepting AIPAC's endorsement and money, CBC members are to use the biblical term of phrase, selling their birthright for a mess of pottage. AIPAC readily sets aside the political concerns of the CPC in its efforts, spending lavishly on campaigns for GOP members of Congress, targeting measures on racial equality, which totaled more than $17 million in 2023 and 2024 cycle. AIPAC, together with its two political action committees, AIPAC, PAC, and United Democracy Project, has one purpose: defending Israel at all costs. We support the candidates based on one criteria: their commitment to strengthening the U.S.-Israel relationship. Pause here and I'll pick back up. Israel has control over the Congressional Black Caucus. The Congressional Black Caucus takes trips to Israel. They put Israel first as well. That's why you don't see them do anything for Black people. They're just there in representation only. Okay. So all these puppets, Jim Clyburn, Bakari Sellers when he was there, but all these puppets like him, Cory Booker, etc., that march up and down the street and tell you about civil rights. Cory Booker was just on I've Had It podcast talking about civil rights and among other things. All of these politicians that do that are selling you out to a genocidal state. You can't say, I agree with civil rights in America, but you don't agree with civil rights abroad. And they're accepting the lobby interest money for it too. If we go on further here, you'll see the single issue litmus test means that the CBC is now beholden to a group that is far more concerned with the state of Israel than it is with the caucus's core mission. The CBC's silence not only damages its credibility, but also jeopardizes its ability to advocate for the interests of Black Americans, many of whom recognize an ethno-nationalist campaign to eliminate a people. They go on to talk about Cori Bush. Let's fast forward here. They bring up Jamal Bowman, right? How AIPAC came after Cori Bush, and then they came after Jamal Bowman. And you notice how silent members of the Congressional Black Caucus were, right? Bowman learned the cost of speaking the truth to spending power of AIPAC. When you go against one of their pieces of legislation, depending on what it is, they'll email you, relentlessly call you, relentlessly protest outside your office, and stop you from even being able to do your job. Excuse me. Why are Black politicians getting in line and on board with Israel? Why are Black politicians aligning with people who are expelling people, killing people, who want an ethno-supremacist state? Why are they doing that? Money, corruption, and greed. Right? So we know what happened to Jamal Bowman. They got him out of there. They got Cori Bush out of there. And they put in Wesley Bell, someone who was going to shuck and jive for them, to be a part of that. Let's fast forward to the, here we go, the Jesse Jackson part. So this is Jesse Jackson back in the day. I want to give you guys a little bit of historical context because I think that this is important. Check this out. The Israel lobby support for Black lawmakers has always rested on their uncritical backing of Israel. January 30th, 1972, Representative Charles Diggs, chair of what was then a 13-member caucus, announced plans for a national Black political convention to take place in March 10th through 12th in Gary, Indiana, to identify and ratify a national Black political agenda for 1972 and beyond. Wait for this. More than 10,000 Black Americans, Black nationalists, intellectuals, civil rights groups, and the CBC met in Gary and published a 55-page national Black agenda. Debate swirled around several measures considered for the platform, including economic empowerment, the possible formation of a third party representing Black Americans, and whether the agenda should endorse busing to achieve integration in public schools. So as much as we talk about third parties now, they were talking about that back then. So it's not a new topic, right? Wait till you see what happened. Let's continue on here. But the contentious debate devolved into irreparable rupture when it came to the question of Israel and Palestine. Black nationalists demanded a resolution to cut U.S. aid to Israel, return Palestinian lands, and affirm Palestinian self-determination. But members of the Congressional Black Caucus recoiled. Facing pressure from Jewish organizations, the CBC denounced the resolution, affirmed its support for Israel, and refused to endorse the national Black agenda. Instead, the caucus drafted its own platform, which plotted a decidedly moderate course, especially in foreign policy. 1 year after its inception, the CBC chose alliance with the Israel lobby over the support for Palestinians advocated by politically independent pro-Black organizations, a choice that continues to define CBC's politics today. So you see, this goes all the way back to the 70s. And when you see people like you see the Cory Bookers, you see the Bakari Sellers, the Hakeem Jeffries, like the Congressional Black Caucus, when you see them, you need to understand they are not there to do anything for the Black community. They already made a vow that they are going to be there for Israel first. I say it's high time we got to kick these puppets out. We need people there that are going to represent the grassroots. So what that means is I am so tired of seeing the Stanford graduates. Cory Booker went to Stanford, the Yale, the Princeton, these people got to go. The only way that you fundamentally see this type of change, I think, number one, you have to get corporate money out of electoral politics. It's just got to go. The big money interests, the lobby groups, it's got to go. Two, you need people in there that are grassroots. And I mean grassroots and from the grassroots, not I graduated from Princeton, but I moved to a low-income neighborhood grassroots. That's what you need. But the Congressional Black Caucus, how silent they have been since the genocide, it is very telling, and it exposes some things, and it reminds me of something else I want to bring up. When you see the way the Ethiopians in Israel sign up to kill Palestinians, even though they are racially discriminated against as well, the Israelis are very racist towards them too. They're just not treating them as badly as they treat the Palestinians. They sterilize some Ethiopian women against their will and shit like that. But they're not bombing their homes and stuff. When you see the Ethiopians in Israel join up the IDF to kill these Palestinian people, they do so because they're just glad it's not happening to them. They sign on to align themselves with the racist, genocidal, supremacist state of Israel, the Israelis. They align themselves with them to kill the oppressed people so that they don't become the oppressed people. This is the crazy part about all of this, but this is exactly what is happening. It's like they are looking down on another group while the group at the top is looking down on both of them. But they don't want to get too much heat, so let me look down on that other group too. Now you got a whole Congressional Black Caucus that is willing to put aside what it was originally designed to do and to put Israel first and to make sure that is the first order of concern. And they are also willing, like the Ethiopians in Israel, to look down on an entire group of people who are oppressed because they're just glad that Israel is not doing it to them. This is a problem. So it goes back to the whole black faces in high places thing. This is a problem. I don't want to hear Jim Clyburn talk about how he marched, he helped with civil rights, how he was a progressive, how he did. I don't want to hear it. Save those stories for somebody who gives a damn, okay? Maybe you can write a book in the future to talk about a time when I actually did shit. I don't want to hear it. Cory Booker, I don't want to hear this story again about your damn parents who couldn't buy a house in New Jersey. And so the white friend came and said, I'm buying the house, and he got the house for your parent. I don't want to hear this story no more. Stop. Don't want to hear it. Hakeem Jeffries, his whole damn family know exactly what the Palestinian people have been going through. And so did Hakeem Jeffries, but he sold out as well for a career in politics. So, and at the point when you would turn away from your own uncle to get that career, when you see some of those faces, as we call them, black faces in high places, you need to start asking questions about how they got there, who they screwed over to get what they get. Because like I said, they don't put you there just because you're smart. They don't put you there because you're nice, or they just like your smile. It's who they stepped on. It's who they're stepping on and who they're willing to align with. And all these people got to go. Cory Booker got to go. Hakeem Jeffries need to go, and his old tired robot ass, he got to go. Jim Clyburn, you need to go. Who's the other one? Maxine, you need to go ahead and retire yesterday. We cannot sit here. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear you, Cory Booker. None of them talk about police brutality, talk about voting rights for Black people. I don't want to hear it. These are just talking points to get reelected. And at the end of the day, you are siding with the oppressor. So don't come over here and talk about the police state here in America and the impact on the Black community when you support the police state in Israel against the Palestinian people. Don't want to hear it. That article by The Nation, Eric, can you put the link to that article in the chat? So people can read it. It's a long article, so people can read it on their own as well. I want everybody to remember this. When they come and speak to you, when they come to your town, some of them are probably going to try to run for president in 2028. I want everyone to remember this. They have basically been gatekeepers. The Congressional Black Caucus has become a gatekeeping group of just a bunch of Black folk that are pro-Israel. And that's it. Nothing else. Nothing more. That's all you are. Y'all just sitting up there holding up seats. And that's what we need to call it. And some people are going to come to you and they're going to tell you, well, this is all we got. Don't ever believe that. There are many people out there that could be so much better. So much better. You can see it here. This is a reminder. This was Bakari Sellers at an AIPAC event. Check this out.
There are some issues that rise above partisan politics, where the stakes are simply too high not to work together. The three of us come from different parts of the country. We come from different political parties, and we connect with different communities. And while we knew one another prior to our work with AIPAC, it is because of AIPAC that our friendships have deepened.
Sellouts on the damn stage. On the damn stage. Bakari Sellers and these other two clowns. Because no, you can't. You can't side with Israel. You can't sit up here and agree with them and then come back home to the Black community and tell Black people, yeah, you know, we got to fight back against da-da-da-da-da. It's a problem. It's been a problem. I think I'll be honest, I think some of the white liberals have been very hesitant to call out Cory, Hakeem, Clyburn, and them, because I think they kind of feel like, well, if I call them out, then, you know, they're Black congressmen. If I call them out, it might be a big, you know. So some of the white liberals, they've been kind of hesitant. They see what I see too, but they've been kind of hesitant. It's like, I don't go after him. Let me go after one of the white. Let me go after one of the white Congress members because I don't want to go after one of the Black ones. And, you know, I applaud The Nation for writing that article because, by the way, that needs to be seen by everybody. Everybody. They need to see it. Cause for reals, like you just can't, you can't get no. And then they pick who your hero is going to be for you. You know that, right? They tell you this is your representation. The Clintons picked Kamala Harris, swooped her in for Senate. They knew the plans they had for her. They put her in front of Black people and say, this is your representation. Barack Obama, this is your representation. Cory Booker, this is your representation. They tell you who is going to represent you. People need to start picking their own representation. That's how I see it. Yeah. Eartha said they're picking Newsom now. Exactly. See, there you go. There you go. We'll come back to the comments for the sake of time. Let me go ahead to the next story. Yeah. Okay. All right. We're talking about gatekeepers. Something is happening here with Ben Shapiro and Matt Walsh. Something's just happening with Ben Shapiro, period. And it seems like Ben Shapiro is now starting to walk back some of the feelings that he's had before about speech. Now, this all comes about from this recent group chat, which has been exposed. You guys heard about this, right? The New York State Young Republicans, this organization in the New York chapter, at least, has been disbanded after a racist group chat. So apparently in this group chat, they were saying things such as, they said they were saying racist, anti-Semitic rhetoric. They were talking about sexual assault. You guys get the idea. We're not going to go through all of that, but you get where I'm coming from. But it was a Telegram group chat, supposed to be a private group chat, right? And so it brought up a question, I guess, for the Daily Wire dudes, whoever is left of it at this point in time. And Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro don't agree here. And I thought this was pretty interesting. You guys need to see this, like how this should be handled. Whereas Matt Walsh just kind of feels like this is more of a private matter. Why are we bringing this, to the forefront, yada, yada. And Ben Shapiro feels as though, no, we got to call it out. When behavior is wrong, we got to call it out. But Ben Shapiro wasn't doing that before. So let's get into it, folks.
Headline, and the title of the article has the quote, "I love Hitler." And when you look at the context of that comment in the group chat, it's very obvious that it is a joke. It's sarcasm, very much in line with the kind of sarcasm Republicans use all the time about, yeah, I'm real far right. I guess I love Hitler. Along the lines of me having theocratic fascist in my Twitter bio, which isn't entirely a joke, but it's mostly a joke. So this is kind of this kind of breaks down a few different ways. And for me, the story here is not the group chat, because these are private messages between people that no one knows. These are not relevant people. And the only reason why the media is showing us this, the only reason why they're doing this is obviously it's a political hit. And in particular, they're trying to distract from the fact that the left has spent the last month, I mean, really much longer than that, but especially the last month, openly celebrating political violence. And now we have a attorney general candidate, who's probably going to be the next attorney general of Virginia, who was in his own messages saying, not as a joke, that he wants his political opponents to die and even their children to die. And he was very specific that he was not joking about it. And so the left is looking to distract from that. And their way of doing it is by somehow obtaining these messages and putting them out to distract us. And
so Politico was the one that broke the story. Politico tends to lean left. I wouldn't go as far as Matt and call it the left, because the Democratic Party isn't actually left.
Some Republicans have been very quick to offer their denunciations, to say how offended they are, how horrible these messages are, that everybody involved should be fired, that they should never be allowed in politics again. I think that response is foolish. I think it gives the left exactly what they want. I have really appreciated J.D. Vance's response. Now, I think the vice president has struck exactly the right chord on this, because he's not going to play the game. And instead, what he's done is he has redirected the conversation back to the thing that the left is trying to distract us from. There's one reason, and one reason only, that this story exists. And it's to get us to stop talking about Jay Jones and the leftists who've been celebrating the murder of Charlie Kirk for the last month. That's the only reason that the story exists. And so J.D. Vance's point is, no, I'm not going to play that game with you. I'm not going to give you what you want. Instead, I'm going to redirect the conversation back to the thing that you're trying to distract us from. And I think that that's exactly the right move. I think there's some disagreement about that, though. There's more.
So let me just say this here, right? Imagine if it were the other way around. If JD Vance, if it were a young Democratic Party chat in New York, and it exposed some things. And by the way, contrary to what people may believe, yeah, Democrats can be racist as hell too. I live in a blue state. Don't come for me. So imagine if there were things that they saw in the young Democrat chat and they talked to JD Vance. Do you think JD Vance's response would still be the same? Because I don't think it would be. That's the partisan part about it, right? Now, we're going to go to Ben Shapiro's response. Matt Walsh basically feels like we shouldn't give attention to it. That's what the left wants to happen. But the reality is, if it were the other way around, and when it is the other way around, you do give attention to it. So listen to what Ben Shapiro says here.
I would agree with you that quote unquote policing, you need to be prudent about how you police. I also think that everyone agrees, I would assume, Matt included, and Matt, you told me if I'm wrong here, that there are certain things that can be said that social consequences should actually attend to. Certainly that's true on the left, right? If you say that you want to murder the Speaker of the House and then calls the kids fascist, there should be social consequences that actually attend to that. I agree with everything you say about the difference between a private group chat between a bunch of young Republican idiots who are outbasing each other and the attorney general candidate in Virginia actually saying the thing running for office. Now, I will say, I don't think these people are kids. I don't think 31-year-old's a kid. I don't like using the sort of language of kids to describe people who really should be married and have children of their own by this point in their life. And I think the kind of loose playing with that term, as though if you're a 31-year-old, which is what one of these people was, that somehow this is the equivalent of being 17. I don't think that's true either.
But the YRs go down to 22. I mean,
I agree, but some of the people who are being quoted here are in their 30s, some are up all the way up to 40. I get it. Again, I'm not even disagreeing with the motivations of the Politico story. In fact, even on my show today, I talked about the motivations of the Politico story, which, Matt, I agree, are completely scurrilous and designed to distract from the sort of violent rhetoric we've seen from the left. But it has led to, I think, a reactionary response on some parts of the right to say there should be no policing ever at all. No social consequences should ever attend to things that are said on the right, that it's basically just pure my side versus your side. The problem I have is, number one, I think that's immoral, and number two, I don't think that's pragmatic. I don't think that's moral, because I think that there are things that get said on the right that are really, really, really ugly, and pretending those away doesn't make them go away. I think.
Let me pause here, because Ben, that goes against what you've been saying before. And that goes against what Ben Shapiro has been doing before. And it almost makes you wonder, where is this really coming from? Is this coming from this change of heart here, coming from what happened to Charlie Kirk? Is that why he's, taking this position? Because here's the thing. Okay. I want to show you an example. We'll come back to this video just to show you something about Ben not following that same standard. You see, Randy Fine, who has said nasty, disgusting things about Palestinians online and on camera, very publicly. Mel said 6 months ago, Ben Shapiro congratulated the openly racist, proudly genocidal demon blob Randy Fine when he won his congressional race. Today, Shapiro scolded his employee, Matt Walsh, for not endorsing the idea that we must police our side more. The hypocrisy knows no bounds. Yeah, because he wasn't doing that. Ben Shapiro was not doing that, right? So Randy Fine, which is you guys, if you're on X, you've seen some of these things. Plus, he said it also on Fox News as well. He has said very, very nasty things about the Palestinian people. Where was that outcry, Ben? Where was that outcry from Ben Shapiro then? And all these times that these things have happened, but you only come forward when it's on the left. And vice versa. You see this on the Democrat side too, where some of the Democrat politicians also do the same damn thing, where it's like, if their party says it, I'm not going to condemn it because it's my party or I'm going to try to make excuses for it. But if it's coming from the right, let me go ahead and shut it down. So that's part of the problem there. But the reality is Ben ain't taking his own damn advice. And that's just really what I wanted to point out, the hypocrisy of it all. You saying, well, we got to be willing to police people regardless what side to come on. Right is right and wrong is wrong. You ain't been doing that. Because I can say it is damn wrong for Israel to genocide a population. Didn't Candace Owens tell you on the Daily Wire, didn't she say that it was wrong what Israel was doing to the Palestinians? And you got rid of her, right? So what is he talking about? Now, let's go ahead and bring it back in here. That's the thing that just drives me crazy.
I think that they're rising. I think that they're getting more common. I know that my death threats from that side are getting more common. I know I have more security because of that, and it's not just from the left. I have lots of security from the left, and I also get lots of security from the right. Matt, I think a little bit earlier today you tweeted that kind of your litmus test is the people who are trying to kill you, and I totally get that. I also have that litmus test. The difference is that I think that if somebody tries to kill you, Matt, there's a good shot that it's going to be a leftist. If somebody tries to kill me, it's a freaking Agatha Christie novel. I just don't know which direction the bullet is coming from at this point, given the sort of various and sundry radical extremes that exist. I'm not going to say that the right is equivalent to the left in this respect, because I don't think it's been mainstreamed to nearly the same effect on the right that it has been on the left. But to pretend that it has not infiltrated a lot of very important spaces, I think is sort of whistling past the graveyard. Now, again, that's not about the Politico story. That's more of a broad commentary about where we are in the movement. And as a matter of sort of morality, we all have things where, again, I'm not saying cast into the outer darkness, right? I'm not calling for any of these people who I think everyone knows who I'm referring to, but I don't think I'm calling for any of these people to be deplatformed, removed from YouTube, or removed from Twitter. In fact, I've called for many of these people, Nick Fuentes, for example, to actually be returned to Twitter, despite the fact that we have some pretty significant disagreements, including the fact that he thinks that I and people like me are scurrilous, sons of Satan, or whatever, however he would put it. But that is a different thing from, is this person part of, quote unquote, the movement that I belong to? And the answer there is he doesn't think I'm part of the movement that he belongs to, which he's made very clear. And so that gets into the question of pragmatism. There's the morality of when someone says something bad, should you condemn it? And I think that as a general matter, you can do what Winsome Sears did, right? Winsome Sears is running against the attorney general candidate in Virginia. She was asked about the Politico chat. She said, yeah, that's bad. Now you do Jay Jones, which seems to me like a pretty good answer and a good way of policing. Well, and then when it comes to the pragmatic,
can I say? So let me just say here, when someone does something bad, like you should just go ahead and admit and say that's wrong. That's not what you've been doing, though. That's not what Ben Shapiro has been doing. Because I think we can all agree that it's bad to kill children, that it's bad to genocide a population. But you don't think that that's bad. And one of the co-hosts that you had, you said, well, she got to go because she thinks this is bad, because she's calling out Israel. So that's the funny part to me, is like, you have not been doing that. Mr. Facts Don't Care About Your Feelings has not been doing that. So that to me makes me believe that it's fear, right? He says, oh, I've amped up security. It's fear that seems to be driving this. This is the response here at the end from Matt Walsh.
Okay. Obviously, if somebody says something publicly and they've decided to announce it to the world, well, then that's fair game for anyone to disagree and anyone to say anything they want about it. But with that in particular, I think that in almost every case, if you are speaking in private, you're having a private conversation, and then somebody with obviously sinister intentions comes along and takes that private conversation and makes it public. In almost every case, my position is, and this has always been my position, I don't care. I'm not even paying attention to it. Okay, I am not going to dignify that. I'm not going to go along with it. I'm not going to give you what you want. I'm not going to reward that strategy. And by the way, part of that's a principled stand on my part. It's also, it's like a self-preservation thing. I don't want people doing that to me. I don't want people going through and revealing my private conversations, not because I'm saying those kinds of things, but because these are private conversations. Now, there are exceptions to that. One exception is if you're running for political office and you want to be the top law enforcement official in a state, and you've said privately that you think that, half of your state should die. Well, that's one of those exceptions. And I think probably in general, if you're running for political office, that's an exception. There are things that become fair game that otherwise wouldn't be. But outside of those exceptions, I just fundamentally disagree with the idea that we should give these people anything that they want, or that we need to start now condemning things that were said in private in conversations that had nothing to do with us. We weren't involved. We don't have the context. They were not intended for any of us to even see in the first place.
Who is going to tell Matt Walsh that none of these conversations are private? Who's going to tell Matt Walsh that these Telegram chats, Signal, all of these apps that people think are private and they're like, oh, we'll get on this because it's more secure and nobody can see where. Who is going to be the one to tell Matt Walsh that none of these conversations are private? People can intercept these conversations at any time. And I feel like the reason that Ben Shapiro is really saying something about that is because of what happened to Charlie Kirk. Because in the past, Ben Shapiro wasn't like, we got to call it out. Right is right and wrong is wrong. And we got to call it out on both sides. He wasn't saying that. He said facts don't care about your feelings. Okay? So where was Ben Shapiro all these years when people were making these kind of comments, these kind of statements and all the stuff that he knew was wrong? But because it wasn't on it, because it was the opposition, he'll speak out of his opposition, but he won't speak out if it's happening within his party. So there you go. And this is just very telling to me. Even on his show, listen to what he said about it as well.
Again, I'm not talking here about whether we should ban people from Facebook. Obviously, the answer is no. Whether we should ban people from YouTube or X. I've argued in favor of the restoration of people's accounts on these platforms because they are platforms. They are not, in fact, publications. However, in your life, there are social consequences to people who say things that you believe are terrible. They don't get to come over to dinner at your house, for example. They don't get to marry your kids, or you don't date them. Right? We all have social lines that we draw all the time. And the question is where to draw those lines and how those lines ought to be drawn. Listen, there's no question that the shutting tight of the Overton window by the left means that the explosion of the Overton window has let in an enormous amount of garbage. That is just a reality. And it is the case that this sort of language is routinely used now among some segment, not all, not even a majority, but among some fragmented segment of the right-wing ecosystem among young people. I mean, that is a...
Why is he pretending as though this is something that just happened? That this has never happened before? As if this language had never been used before. And I'll tell you another thing. I really do think, I think his big upset about this is the quote unquote anti-Semitic remarks that were in that group chat. Because here's the thing. There's been a number of times when there have been things that have been said against Black people, LGBTQ people, that were very hateful. I ain't see Ben Shapiro come call that out. You know what I mean? So it seemed like because it includes him, now it's like, let's call it out. Let's speak out against it. And then also I think part of this is fear. But it's just a lot of hypocrisy. A lot of hypocrisy. Oh my God.
Reality. My work schedule has been incredibly busy as of late, as you know, especially
Blah,
because
blah,
of the extended
blah.
show. Hope will represent an honest rubric for dealing with issues like this. One, obviously, it is very cynical for Politico to target young GOP group chats while leaving left-wing chats untouched. Because I promise you, these same left-wing chats exist. They're just as bad, if not worse. There are university chats among professors that are just as bad, if not worse. All of that is true.
But what does this have to do? What was just revealed? So, it's almost like he has to come in and do some type of damage control and say, oh, no, I don't want people to see this. We're not like that and da-da-da-da. And we don't want to blame a whole entire group because of things that a few in a group chat said. But you've been doing that for years. For years, Ben Shapiro has been blaming an entire group of people because of what a few people say in a group chat or online. He has been doing that. They have been sitting there. He sat there and he called Democrats these radical crazies. The Democratic Party ain't radical. It's center right wing. It's a right wing party. It's not radical. Right? Okay. You have been labeling you, Fox News, everybody else. All you guys have been labeling you guys are this, you guys are that as one big whole group. But now you don't want people to do that to your side. We'll finish it up here.
All of that is true. Two, The right doesn't have an obligation to go totally insane over such chats. Okay, what the left likes to do and what the media love to do is they love to take stuff like this and then they say to every member of the Republican Party, you must personally condemn all of this. And the answer should be, I'm happy to condemn the crap in there, but why am I responsible for it? I'm not responsible for that. Well, why is the implication even that I'm responsible for that? I don't believe it. And your implication that everyone on the right is responsible for a group of young Republicans who say terrible things in private to one another, that somehow that implicates the entire Republican Party, while meanwhile, the Attorney General candidate in Virginia publicly says things, and that doesn't implicate the entire Democratic Party. I mean, or Zoran Mamdani is going to be your New York mayor, and that dude is just openly pro-terrorism. Like, obviously, there is a difference. This Politico story, which is gaining...
So, does everybody see the bias? Does everybody see the bias? If we are all going to be honest and call out what is wrong, regardless which side it's on, and if Ben really believed that, he would be calling out his precious Israel. But he ain't going to do that. He's not going to do that. He would tell you the truth, that they are committing the genocide. He would tell you, yeah, they're killing these kids, and he wouldn't just call it war anymore. He would be honest about that. So there is a rift that is happening here in particular. I do want to show you guys this because he said this about Marjorie Taylor Greene and some others on the right. He says that they are dividing the Republican Party. And I think this is what a lot of this goes back to as well. Many years people point fingers and say the left is divided, the left is not united. This is the first time that I can remember where I see this happening on the right, right? So it's like, I feel like Ben Shapiro is a gatekeeper on the right. We talked about gatekeepers on the left, but I feel like he's a gatekeeper on the right. He's not only telling Matt Walsh, this is what it should be, even though he ain't been practicing that, but he now goes on to say how other people who have different opinions and views, but are still conservatives, they're a problem. They're dividing the party. Listen.
Taylor Greene, she is attacking the president day in and day out. Who's dividing the party? The people who mention it or Marjorie Taylor Greene? Marjorie Taylor Greene spent the last 24 hours ripping into Republican men. For example, Marjorie Taylor Greene, apparently, she tore into her party and said GOP men in the Congress are quote unquote weak. Apparently, and now she's getting this media blitz from the left while torching Speaker Johnson, torching Donald Trump, accusing Donald Trump of a cover-up over Epstein. Quote, whereas President Trump has a very strong dominant style, he's not weak at all. A lot of the men here in the House are weak, Greene said. There's a lot of weak Republican men, and they're more afraid of strong Republican women. So they always try to marginalize the strong Republican women that actually want to do something and actually want to achieve. Sure, that must be it. It can't be that you've been out there day and night getting the strange new respect from the left by attacking Trump over his foreign and domestic policy while engaging in the most rudimentary, conspiratorial nonsense. If you point that out, are you the divider or is it Marjorie Taylor Greene who's busy taking victory laps on CNN? When people keep trotting out folks like Alex Jones, and the idea is that if you don't, quote unquote, unite with Alex Jones, somehow you're undermining the party. It's Alex Jones who's torching members of the Trump administration. I mean, here's Alex Jones on Tucker Carlson's show, torching, in order, Pam Bondi, Kash Patel, and Dan Bongino. Who's the one who's dividing things? Who's the one attacking the president's policy? Who's the one who's shooting inside the tent, by the way?
And that is the gatekeeping right there, folks. The fact that they are criticizing Donald Trump and trying to hold Donald Trump accountable. Ben Shapiro doesn't think that that should happen. You see, this is the gatekeeping. And this is a big part of the problem. When you have someone like him, it's like, it should be this way. This is the way it should be. This is the way it should be. Like that type of thing. He kind of looks as though if you start to push in an area where, hey, you ran on this, you said you were going to do this, you know, I'm going to push back because you're not doing what you said you were going to do. That person's a problem. They're dividing the party. And I'm not even part of the Republican Party. But this is crazy. But he's a gatekeeper. Ben Shapiro is there to make sure that everybody stay on one accord. First, he had an issue when people started to break away because of Israel. They got problems with Israel. You got to go. Candace, you're fired. You got to get out of here. Well, Ben, we kind of think with this group chat, what are you talking about? No, we got to hold all sides accountable. What's right is right and wrong is wrong. If something is wrong, we need to call it out. Even though he hasn't been doing that for years. He's only been calling out on one side. And now he comes to tell you, he says Marjorie Taylor Greene and all of them, Tucker Carlson, yada, yada, they're dividing the Republican Party. So basically what he's saying to you is, if you have this different mindset, let's say you feel that someone should be held accountable. If you start to question things, your problem, and you are dividing the party. It's groupthink mentality. And a lot of gatekeeping is about that, this groupthink mentality. And the moment that you don't bend the knee anymore, the moment that you don't move in the way that they want you to move, you're seen as a problem and they want you out of there. So the gatekeeping's got to go. So you see, you got gatekeepers on in the Democratic Party and you got gatekeepers in the Republican Party as well. We're living in crazy times, you guys, but it was hilarious to me that he was trying to lecture Matt Walsh to do something that he hasn't even been doing. Ay. You ready, Eric? Okay.
All right. You said your bit.
Your feelings. Facts don't care about your feelings. All right, let me get out of here.
Unless it goes against them, right?
Exactly. Oh my gosh.
I do have a little announcement. I'll just throw up here. Corey and I are going to be on Jason's podcast, who we see in the chat in places as NY Varsity Sports. Let me throw that up here. There it is. And I put the link in the chat. So that's going to be tomorrow, Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern. Corey and I are going to be on there, and we'll see what Jason has to throw at us. There we are.
Based. All right, that's good to go.
All right.
I'm heading out of here.
We'll let you go.
Have a good week, guys. Bye.
All right, and I'm just going to close things down here. So catch us then. Make sure to put this in the chat. I'll throw it out as a tweet.
Don't forget the super chats.
I wouldn't dream of forgetting the super chats. So we'll be on there tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern, and there's no telling what we'll get up to. In fact, one of the things we might talk about, excuse me while I bring it up here, is, and we can put that there, and we can put, is the latest 11 demand Substack post, which actually just went up like an hour ago. So if you haven't seen it till now, that's because it wasn't up until now. But I think we'll be talking about this tomorrow. Of course, we talk about it a lot on the Sabby show. This was something that Jason, whose podcast we're going to be on, actually said, I think during the Zoom hangout. He said that he likes Sabby's show because it doesn't put all this focus on left versus right fighting. It talks about up versus down. So here we go. 11 demands. Forget left versus right. It's up versus down. And we got, the D's and the R's here in the media. There's a fight happening in America, but it's not the one the corporate media would have you believe it is. They want you to think it's about red versus blue and Democrats versus Republicans. Why? Because it masks what's really going on. The real fight is about up versus down, as in the top 0.1% versus the 99%. They spend vast sums of money on narrative management because they know there are so many more of us than them, and they have to keep us at each other's throats, or else we'll see what's really going on and look up. They run it like a puppet show theater, keeping the audience entranced while pickpockets rob them blind. Anytime someone notices, they yell, "Did you see what that puppet did?" Right? It's like, did you see what that Democrat did? And the other on Fox News, and then on the CNN, they'll say, did you see what that Republican did? And it's It's a show. It's a game to keep us, the 99%, lurching from crisis to scandal to crisis, to prevent us from seeing what we have in common, that all of us are non-billionaires. It doesn't have to be this way, but real change will require a new kind of politics, one that's based on a clear set of demands. And if you go to 11demands.org, you can read more about that. The No Kings rally show that people are hungry for change, but when it's co-opted by one of the red or blue teams, it just becomes part of that puppet show theater. Real change starts with real demands and ends with millions of people in the streets, not letting up until those demands are met. You can check it out at 11demands.org. Let's work together on getting there. And you can always hop into the 11 Demands site. A little ways down, there's the link into the 11 Demands list. And I think we'll be talking about all this and more tomorrow at 5 p.m. on the Option Podcast with Jason. So I hope to see a lot of you there. And I'm just going to hit this one more time in the chat for that one. But let's see about these super chats, because we have a few in the queue. Thanks for the super chat. Chip Walter, who says, the Congressional Black Caucus is nothing but puppets, muppets, and soup slurpers. Time to vote third party. Yep, vote based on those demands. And thanks, Ms. KC, and your very attractive cat, for being a member for 6 months. And Ms. KC says, Black folks didn't show out to NK 2.0, No Kings, because we didn't cause the problem and there were no demands. It was a parade, not a protest. That's a really good way of putting it. And thanks for the super chat, Russ. Here we go with the crab in the barrel mentality, native podcast. Stop pulling people down and start pulling people up and moving forward towards greatness. And thanks for this super chat, Mr. Turbo Jerko, who says, great job on Doc. Did you get help? It's well done. Yeah, when Sabrina was first talking about doing the documentary, and we shot, we did interviews with people that make up a part of it, and she was saying, oh, I want to make this into a documentary, and I actually said to her, and she said I wanted it to be like the Rome documentary called Death to America, and I remember saying to her, well, maybe it can be like a mini doc, because like a real documentary is a lot of work. Like that's a lot of hours. And what Sabrina did is she went out and found a professional editor, and they have put together like a real product here. This is a real documentary, and she did the fundraising for it. And I think it's quite something. And but yeah, that was part of it, was fundraising, getting a professional editor, and just putting the time and the effort and the money, frankly, into it. So yeah, we're pretty excited about it. The premiere is I think it's November 15th, but we'll be talking more about that. And right when it comes out, you'll be able to see it here on YouTube, and it's going to be freely available. We're not going to be paywalling it or anything, because it's all for, it's for you guys. You make the show work. Thanks for this one, Russ. Moving us forward toward greatness. My apologies. Okay, I think a little correction there. All good. And thanks for this one, Turbo Jerko, who says Sabby has been nailing it last while big time. You got it. Thanks for that. And thanks for the super chat, Dr. Teeth, who says, thank you, Sabby. I can always count on learning things every time I listen to your podcast. Thank you for the deep dive the other day, and you're educating us every episode. And free Palestine. And thank you. And I got one more here. Also from Turbo Jerko, thanks for this one. He says, talking about Ben Shapiro saying, this little marmot preached free speech absolutism until it's Israel conflict. Yeah, I mean, these people who are paid to speak for Israel are there's no principles, there's no moral compass behind them. They're basically like PR people, like spokespeople. The game is that they want you to think, that they really mean it, that they have, a real principles and real compass. But, that's their job. They're paid actors. And it's up to us to recognize that, to have real demands. The reason I talk so much about the demands is that it helps you see through things. If you have this clear set of demands, then when something like No Kings comes up, right, what's the first thing we say? What's Sabby saying? Well, what are their demands? It's like, come to the protest. Well, what are your demands? Oh, we'll tell you that later. Just show up. Well, no, you need to have those first. Anyways, I've been going on too long here. Hope to see all of you on Jason's podcast tomorrow. The link is in the chat. I think that's going to do us for tonight. You can catch Sabby next live on Tuesday at 7 p.m. for the usual live show. And until then, as Sabby says, all of you have a good night and keep up that fight. And we'll see you hopefully tomorrow and next time. Thanks all.